土は土に
earth, earth to earth,
灰は灰に
ashes to ashes,
塵は塵に
dust to dust,
幻は幻に
illusions to illusions,
そして
and
夢は夢
dreams to dreams.
夢とは寄せて
A
は
dream
返す
is
波間の
something
真顔
drawn
に
in
描
the
く
sand between the coming and receding waves.
それは波が寄せるたび
Something
に
so
真っ白
fragile
に
that
戻っ
it
て
is
しまう
wiped blank
儚き
each
もの
time the wave draws back.
だから心なき人は
For this
それを
reason,
描
the
くことを
heartless might
無駄
sneer
な
at
こ
the
とだと
drawing
嘲笑
and
った
call it useless.
しかしも
However,
彼
no
女の描いた
wave
夢
will
を
ever
消す
come
波
again
は
to wipe
二度と
away
訪
the
れない
dream she drew.
彼女が最後に描い
Her
た
final,
美しき夢
beautiful
は
dream
もう永
will
遠
not
に消える
disappear
ことはない
for all eternity.
さあさあ思い浮かべて
Come,
ごらんなさい
try to picture it.
それは暖かき春の日
Picture
も
it as the
柔らかき
gentle
午後の
afternoon
日差しが
sunshine on a warm spring day,
そのまま陰ることを
as
忘
though
れ
the
たかも
light will never dim again.
それはとてもとても
After all,
素敵なこと
it
なのだ
is
から
such a wonderful thing.
あなたの最後の夢の立ち会い
Witness
に
to your final dream.
プブリウス・ワルギリア・マロ
Publius Virgilia Maro. The suspects were gathered in a room, and several inquisitors were reporting on the results of their investigation. Their uniforms closely resembled those of Eiserne Jungfrau, but they were slightly different. Also different were the badges signifying their department. Then came the sound of someone clapping their hands at once. It was the lead female inquisitor. It was her signal that all reasoning had been completed. For your attention, it is now beyond doubt. The preceding logic has proven the non-existence of your alibi. At the other end of her pointing finger was a quivering maid with frightened eyes. Her name was... No, that wasn't important. All that mattered now was that she could have freely entered the locked room study where the victim was found, and furthermore, that it had been proven that her claimed alibi for the time of the crime was contradictory. Shaking, the maid tried to continue her illogical pleading, but all her arguments had already been destroyed. With this, we have found sufficient proof for the whodunit and the howdunit. Know that your position as the culprit is now an unshakable fact. You must be joking. Why would I kill the master I loved and respected so? I have no motive, no reason. Who did it and how? Know that these are all that is needed to be that these are all that need to be established. For your attention, I beg to inform you of the following. Know that motives are unnecessary in mysteries. The Inquisitor spoke coldly. After finishing her prayer, Virgilia stepped back from the casket, which lay on an altar bedecked with many beautiful roses. In her place, Beato moved to the front of the casket, wearing the Territory Lord's cape. Though the cape was supposed to represent dignity and majesty, it somehow made Butler look smaller. Butler held a book with a majestic binding in his hand. It was a game record that had just been written, or perhaps it was a tale. A game, or else a fragment. Written in it was the dream that would be more enjoyable for her than any other. Butler pressed it against his forehead and contemplated for some time. Then he kissed it and laid it gently in the casket. It was placed upon her chest, made it look like a little girl clutching her favorite stuffed animal as she drifted off to sleep.
これは
This
俺からお
is my
前に
gift
捧
to
げる
you,
唯一の物語だ。
the only one there will ever be. This tale will be shut up with you in your casket for all eternity. So no one will be able to read it except for you in your casket.
猫箱に閉ざされ
Shut
た
away in the
唯
cat
一
box, the
不
only
変
unchanging,
永
unviolable,
遠の物語
eternal tale.
だから
This
誰に
way,
も物
no
語を
one
汚
will
せ
be
ない。
able to defile her tale.
否定できない。
No one can deny
反
it,
論できない。
and no one can argue against it.
俺とこいつだけの
Belonging to just me and her, just
唯
the
一
two of
絶
us.
対の
This is the one and
真
only
実。
certain truth. Those bastards. A man dashed through a town wrapped in twilight. The daytime hustle and bustle as the charming old-fashioned village, which combined tradition with the stylistic beauty in the classic style of the last century, now seemed like a mere dream. The orange setting sun was already hiding behind the clock tower, and the narrow alleyways were rapidly descending into the darkness. As the gas lights began to turn on, they only made the darkness of the twilight stand out all the more. The man sprinted. There was no time. He had to hurry. He had several experiments to do and things he had to check, and he had all taken longer than he had expected. Yeah, there's no mistake here. The whodunit and howdunit are all you need in mysteries. In the mystery genre, the motive, or the why done it, is given the least precedence. The only thing needed for a murder to exist is a culprit to commit it. No part of that requires a motive, so it's usually the most ignored element. In fact, these days, there are even some who call it an unnecessary element in mystery stories. If you determine the culprit with nothing but the why done it, that's no mystery. That's propaganda. However, that doesn't mean you can ignore the motive. It doesn't make it okay to ignore the heart. We both know how enjoyable her final rest will be. So I doubt there is anyone who could disturb it. After all, who could possibly disturb the sleep of a child dreaming with a smile on their face? Come, it is time for us to leave. If you're too noisy, we'll wake her from her dream.
そうだな。
You're
寝
right.
ている子には毛布
What else should you do with a sleeping kid except put a blanket on
部
them,
屋を暗くして
turn off the lights,
静かに立ち去
and
るの
walk
が決
away
まりってもん
quietly?
だ。
After looking at the casket one last time, Virgilia turned around quietly. Butler did the same, but he then stopped and turned to face the rose-covered altar. Butler said his final words with his heart. As long as those words didn't leave his mouth, no one would ever know what they were. However, those words of the heart caused Butler's expression to change several times. At first he frowned sadly, then his face clouded with remorse, and then changed to a resigned, bittersweet smile. It flashed through several varied expressions. Then the final expression that crossed his face was surprisingly a gentle smile. Something rose to Butler's lips, however he beat it back down. There could certainly be no words to express the many feelings he kept in his chest. so saying anything aloud would probably be crude. Butler understood this and stopped himself from speaking once more with a resigned smile.
ありがとう。
Thank you.
お礼を言われるようなこと
Oh, I have done nothing deserving of your gratitude.
あとを頼む。
I'll leave the rest to you. After seeing Virgilia nod back at him, Butler turned away from the altar one more time and left the chapel. Virgilia also disappeared, and all disturbances that might have interrupted their blissful sleep were gone. The inquisitors listened with a calm, no, scornful gazes. They listened to the frantic babbling of the maid accused of murdering her master. However, nothing she said could bury the fault in her own alibi. They were all mere emotional arguments. I loved and respect my master so much, I had no motive for killing him. And no matter how much he spoke, it only made her look more and more like the floundering true culprit struggling pathetically. The whodunit and howdunit had been satisfied. As for the whydunit, the motive, the heart, who would care? No matter how much you spoke of her gratitude for her master, who had graciously fed her and given her a job when she had been left to starve on the streets after various misfortunes, that didn't help her case in the slightest in the mystery genre. Therefore, her motive didn't matter. All that could just be squeezed out of the culprit afterwards. An inquisitor took out a roll of parchment and held it forth, cutting off the maid's sobs and protests. This is how you committed the crime. Know that this indictment has been received by the Great Court and that your arrest has been approved. Here is the warrant for your arrest. The motive is unnecessary. Know that such a thing is completely extraneous in the matter of pinpointing the culprit. With that in mind, I beg to inform you of the following. Know that we of the SSVD possess methods of forcing unrepentant criminals to reveal the truth. Be advised that with these interrogations tools blessed by the power of justice, we Inquisitor will strap up your limbs, burn them, crush them, hang you by them, and thereby wring the red truth out of you. It isn't even necessary for you to confess. Aids! Arrest that maid! It wasn't me! I didn't kill the master! Hold it right there. You've got the wrong culprit. A man kicked the door open and the Inquisitors were all shocked at the sight of him. Why are you here? Know that you are no longer in charge of this case. Quiet. You find one person without an alibi and just assume that she's the culprit? Do you really think there's no need for a motive, for a heart in crime? Crimes are committed by people. There are no crimes without a heart. I'll never accept any theory that ignores the heart. Know that your focus on the whodunit is simply embarrassing. The whodunit is unnecessary. Such a thing can be easily extracted through interrogation. Even the Great Court has already acknowledged that this woman is the culprit. Great Court has heard your argument that the maid must be guilty because everyone besides her has an alibi. And they're mistaking your overconfidence and conceit for wisdom. If any of the other suspects loses their alibi, your evidence so far proves nothing. Just look at how pathetic some of these other alibis are. Did the clock in the reception hall chime midnight at exactly the right time? Did the dog by the back door bark at anyone? So, you managed to prove the maid's alibi is false. Congratulations. But does it end there? It may be possible for her to do it, but does she have any motive at all? Are the alibis for the others absolutely perfect? This maid wasn't the only one with a false alibi. You have to keep on searching if you want to find the others. Was there some sort of grudge against the victim, or some money-related problem? Don't abandon the motive. Don't abandon the heart. Dry mysteries where the motives can just be figured out later aren't worth anyone's time. If the maid isn't the culprit, then why did she fake an alibi? Even asking such a question is a waste of time. No, that we just have to interrogate her, wring out the red truth, and have her sign in red blood to everything that happened at the time of the crime. Yeah, you can probably do that. You can just use the tortures of yours to squeeze out everything frankly and objectively as seen from the eyes of God. But you know what? I'll never accept mysteries and theories that lack heart. I have already taken over responsibility for this case. I even have a decree right here. Come now, aides. No, there is no reason to hesitate. I order you to arrest this maid. When she gave this order, her subordinates hesitated, looking back and forth between their superior and that man. I won't let you. The real culprit is a different person. It's possible to use motive to find them, and the alibi trick is an old one. You can't forget the heart. There's no need for that. We just have to find the suspicious ones who could have committed the crime, interrogate them and squeeze out the red truth. On the off chance that they are not the culprit, then we just have to interrogate the next suspect. You call that reasoning? Stand back. We will arrest that woman. Know that this maid is the culprit. It is forbidden for a servant to be the culprit. What did you say? The words of power blasted away the aides who were trying to arrest the maid. Van Dyne 20 rules. Rule 11. If you want to torture this maid, make sure you double check the alibis for a second wife or her lover first. Van Dyne cosa? Those two already have clear alibis for the time of the crime. That? An alibi? Damn it, a fool like you couldn't understand no matter how easy I make it for you. If you want to call yourself a chief inquisitor, try and figure out at least that much for yourself. Until then, I'll be taking the maid's arrest warrant. Then what about you? Can you prove that this maid didn't commit the crime? No, that she was clearly away from the kitchen at the time of the crime. What was she holding then? And where? She can't prove it. I can't prove it, and you can't prove it. No one can. That's why you have no choice but to use these torture devices to interrogate her until the red truth is squeezed out. You can squeeze out as much blood and truth from the true culprit as you damn well please. But know this, I won't let you interrogate or torture anyone who isn't the culprit. This is why everyone says you're too soft. All the suspicious must be interrogated. That is how we Inquisition conduct our witch trials. That's right, we are Inquisitors. Felling evil witches is our job. However, we must not risk hurting the innocent. We must not suspect them. All humans have their own personal truths. Those should only be exposed when they commit crimes. We've been given the right to expose them, but there's one thing we can't do. What is that? No one, not even God, has the right to expose the innocent truths of those that have not sinned. The maid finally realized that he was trying to protect her.
どちら様か存じません
I
が
don't know who you are, but
ありがとう
thank you very much.
私
I'm really not the culprit.
犯人じゃないんです
Yeah, I know. Your boyfriend said he'll be willing to give up everything to prove your alibi. You should thank him. That kid said that honor and reputation are worth nothing compared to you. But
そんな
if
ことを
he
したら
does that, he won't come to that. Exposing the secrets between lovers is a job for a third-rate magazines. That's not mystery. I'll never allow for heartless reasoning. Then, for the first time, the man's sullen expression relaxed, and he patted the maid's head unreservedly. I'm sure you two will be happy together. Still, meeting together in secret while on the job is hardly praiseworthy. Try to keep that to a minimum.
ありがとうございます
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. These words were heard only by the two of them. That man had learned of her innocence, which could only be proven by exposing the secrets of a pair of young lovers, and he had rushed about in search of a solution, resentful of the arrogance of those trying to expose this by forcible means. The point of theory making is not to create a culprit, nor it is to trample the truths in the hearts of the innocent in the process. Heart matters. If you want to play the detective, don't forget the heart. Forget that and we are just intellectual rapists. Don't forget it. The Inquisitors couldn't argue back any longer after the man's forceful words. That man's name was Will, but everyone used to call him by a different title. Chief Inquisitor in the SSVD, the 8th District Repentance Enforcement Agency of the Great Court of Heaven. Wizard hunting right. That's the last thing I'm leaving behind for all of you. If you want to be the next wizard hunting right, remember it. Never forget. Una lama nera. E se vi dico, questo l'abbiamo visto già. Questo l'abbiamo già visto. È quello della volta scorsa. Se vi dico che in episodio 5 mi sembra nella parte relativa nel glossario del Eiserne Jungfrau si parlava già della SSVD. Aveva già pensato al caro Willard H. Wright, o come dicono quando lo chiameranno per nome, Willardo H. Wrighto. Shinjitsu wa genso nakana ni È vero, Erika aveva una falce viola, ma è perché è il suo colore, e basta. The Murder of Beatrice. Quietly, the rain fell down. The rain of sadness dripped down the outer walls of the chapel, quietly washing away the dust of the world of the living. The chapel doors were open. For a wedding, only those with invitations would be allowed in. However, for a funeral, the doors would be open for all those who remember the deceased. So, this must be a funeral. A figure holding an umbrella approached the chapel. It was Will. A reception desk had been set up in the entrance of the chapel. As the figure approached, Canon, who had been sitting at this desk, stood up and welcomed him with a bow. This is the reception desk. We are collecting the names of all mourners. If you would sign here. Sorry, I'm not here to mourn. I'm here to meet someone. You came to a funeral to meet someone? A dubious expression rose to Canon's face. Will pulled an envelope from his pocket and showed him the sender's name. My apologies. Please enter. Thanks. Could I at least have one of those? Thank you very much. I'm sure she will be pleased. Canon handed him one of the golden roses being handed out to all the mourners. Will took it, silently bowed his head, and entered the chapel. Inside the chapel, several people who appeared to be the family of the deceased were gathered together, and they all seemed to be recalling memories of the departed. Father, you must compose yourself. Why don't you rest in the waiting room for a bit? I killed her. I did it. Absurd. How could that be, Rosa-sama? Father was really bawling. Yeah, Beatrice. I'm sure he didn't cry this much when Mother passed away. Hey, now's not the time to say things like that. Some sobbed, unable to conceal their tears, and some spoke softly of old memories. They were all remembering the departed in their own ways, it seemed. When Will approached the altar, several people turned around. Of course, none of them knew who Will was. Paying this no mind, Will walked in front of the casket of the altar, which seemed to be buried in golden roses. Inside the casket was no corpse. Instead, as though it lay in the place of a body, there was a single, thick book with an extravagant binding. The space all around it was filled with countless golden roses. There were words printed on the book's cover. To my beloved Beatrice, October 5th, 1986.
Miss Beatrice, Mrs. だったら許しな。
Miss Beatrice, if it was... Come si pronuncia MRS? Mrs? Then forgive me. I've never met you. However, allow me to express my condolences. He took the rose he had received from the reception area and placed it in the casket. He had absolutely no connection to the woman called Beatrice. However, since he had come to visit a funeral, he had to follow this minimum display of respect for the dead. As part of this, Will prayed for the passage of the departed to the next world. Pardon me, but who might you be? I am Ushiromiya Kraus. I am acting instead of the chief mourner. This is my child, Leon. Pleased to meet you. I'm Ushiromiya Leon.
リオン
Leon.
誰だお前
Just who are you?
理科の理に魚する
It
の
is
理
written
オン
as
と読みま
well,
す
pronounced Leon. Per chi conosce Fate, la doppiatrice è Saber.
ちょっと日本人っぽくない名前ですよね
It sounds a bit strange for a Japanese name, doesn't it? Will stared at Leon's face, wearing a confused expression. He hadn't seemed to be particularly interested in Kraus, but apparently Leon had drawn some sort of reaction from him. Rather than interest, it was more of as though he felt like something was out of place.
旦那様
Kraus-sama.
奥様がそろそろ
Madame said it's about time.
そうか
Ah, I see.
一同の諸君
Ladies and
こ
gentlemen,
こで賑やかに
if
して
you're
は
too noisy in here, it may disturb the dead.
控室の準備
I've
が
been
整っ
told
た
that the
そう
waiting room has been readied.
場所を変えよう
Shall we move over? There? When Kraus called out to everyone, they began to move towards the chapel waiting room.
すまん
My
リ
apologies.
オンはしばし
Leon,
お客様
could
の
you
お相手を
entertain our guest for now?
私はみんなを
I will
控
guide
室
the
に案内
others
す
to the waiting room.
はい父さん
Yes, father. It looked like a natural conversation with no awkwardness for either father or child.
親子な
Father and child, is it?
そうですが
Yes, but
何か
why do you ask?
後ろ宮クラウスの
Ushiromiya's Kraus' child is supposed to be Jessica.
ジェシカは妹です
Jessica's my little sister.
お呼びする必要はあり
Do
ます
you
か
need me to call for her?
いや
No,
Right.
that won't be necessary. Apparently, some sort of game was already being played right off the bat. Scratching at his head with an irritated look on his face, Will glanced around.
失礼ですが
Pardon me, but what sort of relation did you have with the deceased?
全く何もね
Not at all.
迷惑な
None
話
at all. It's a real pain.
ではあなたは
Then
どうしてこの
why
葬
did
儀
you come to this funeral? Since Leon was a fairly mild person, Will's behavior was met with nothing more than a blank expression. A normal person would probably have put on a dubious look long before this. Will scratched his head again and yelled angrily at someone other than Leon.
来たぜ
The Witch of Miracles and Miko to the Witch of Theater going. In the 7th game, she conducts Beato's funeral, met with defeat in their previous game, and came out as a loser. She had proclaimed that she will tear out the guts of Beato's game to satisfy her irritation. And yet... Willard H. Wright. A member of the SSVD, the 8th District Repentance Enforcement Agency of the Great Court of Heaven, Inquisitor ranked Archbishop, First Class, goes by the name Wright of the 20 Wedges, or Wizard Hunting Wright. He was an ace inquisitor in his youth and was feared for being both ruthless and merciless in his work. However, at some point there was a change in his work attitude, and his previous flashy escapades became a thing of the past. His current style is often fickle, alternating between laziness and obsessive bursts of energy regarding mere trifles. By now, everyone has given up trying to understand him. He has already submitted his resignation and had it accepted. Only a few days remain before he will lose the name of Wright. A Willard, stupendo, intanto, bellissimo. Human side. Ushiromiya Leon, the first child of Kraus and Natsui. Jessica is their second child. He was given the silver ring of the head's successor and will succeed the position of family head upon turning 20. Mild, polite, and without any clear faults, except for being too young. This youth is more suitable to become the next head than... This youth is more suitable to become the next head than any other, and he is adored by Kinzo. Tra l'altro, stupendo design. Io amo Ushiromiya Leon, è uno dei miei personaggi preferiti di Umineko, e aspettavo tantissimo episodio 7 per poterlo introdurre, ecco. Bene. I'm here.
そろそろ顔を出しやがれ。
Is it about time that you show your face? The members of the Ushiromia family had already followed the crowd's instructions and moved to the waiting room. By now, this cold, vast chapel, decorated with gold roses, was empty except for Will and Leon.
よく来たわね。
So you've come,
異端審問。
Inquisitor
魔
Wizard
術師狩
hunting,
りのライ
right?
ト。
The girl's voice came suddenly from behind the pair. When Leon turned around in surprise, a girl had appeared out of nowhere and drifted down on top of the altar. She landed softly on the sacred funeral altar as though this was perfectly normal, crushing the golden roses under her shoes. Of course, Leon did not know this girl. Just why on earth were all these people unrelated to the funeral popping up one after another?
俺はもう引退。
I'm already retired. If you have a job you need doing, go ask the new, right?
いい
No,
え、あなたに
you're the one I want to ask.
この事件
I'm giving this case to
を送
you.
った物語を
Did you read the tale I sent you?
斜め読み程度に。
I skimmed it.
あなたがどなたか存じませ
I
ん
don't know who you are,
そ
but
こから降り
please
てくだ
get
さい
down from there.
そこは神聖な
That's
祭
a
壇です
sacred altar. Snapping out of a daze, Leon told the girl to get down off the altar, but the girl ignored this completely. On top of that, Will kept on talking to the girl as though Leon wasn't even there.
リオンとか。
Leon, was it?
こいつは何者だ。
Who is this person?
その子が名乗ったと
You've already heard who. Ushiromia Leon. There's no case of a person with that name appearing in any of the previous games.
お前の駒なのか。
Is this your piece?
いい
No.
えこのゲームで
It's a true and proper piece of this game board.
登場人物
One of the appearing characters.
ゲームマスターはお前
You're
だ。
the game master.
なら
That means it's your piece.
ベアとの猫
I've just enclosed Beato's cat box in a larger cat box.
リオンは
Leon is one of the pieces who has a possibility of appearing inside it.
そういうことか。
I see. In other words, it's your piece.
私が置いた
It's a piece I've placed, would be the correct way to say it.
ただし、
So you're saying this piece isn't your subordinate as Erika was.
エリカって誰
Erika? Who's that?
エリカさん
Erika-san?
理解しようとする。
Don't try to
普通
understand.
にならん。
You will just get a headache. Leon didn't have a clue what they were talking about. However, it seemed clear, though neither of them were familiar, they both knew a lot about the Ushiromia family.
私には
I don't know what you two are talking about.
とにかく
At any rate, you there,
そ
miss,
の祭壇から降りてくだ
please
さい
get down off the altar.
後ろ宮家
I asked this as the successor to the Ushiromia family headship. Even Leon was finally forced to speak in a raised voice at this girl, who continued to chat while casually standing on the altar. However, the girl ignored this completely. On the other hand, Will did show a reaction.
地域当主はクラウスの
The successor to the headship is supposed to be Kraus.
父クラウスは
And my father, Kraus, will be the acting head until I turn 20.
20歳になると
When I turn 20, I am to succeed at the
継
headship.
承することになっています
初耳だ。
First I've heard of this.
証拠はあるのか。
Can you prove it? It seems that even Leon was starting to get ticked off by now. That calm expression seemed to twitch slightly.
これは
This is the successor silver ring of the one-winged eagle.
これで証拠になり
Is
ます
that proof enough for you?
銀の指輪。
Silver ring?
金の
The gold ring of the head has appeared several times,
次
but
期当主の
I've never heard anything about a silver ring for the successor.
クラウスもジェ
I
シカ
don't remember Kraus
そ
or
んなものを
Jessica
指
ever
に
wearing
通して
one
い
of
た記
those.
憶がね。
嬉しいわ
I'm glad.
斜め読み
It seems you've read it pretty well for skimming. When a witch hands you a story, you never know when something absurd will pop up, especially when it's a great witch from the Senate.
あなた方は
Who in the world are you two?
失礼だが
Sorry, but I don't have a clue what you're talking about.
さっぱりわかりません。個人への献花が
If you finished offering flowers for the departed, please make your exit.
どうやらあなた方は
It seems you two are not worthy of our family's hospitality. Leon finally ran out of patience. These were the strictest words of this gentle kid. These were the strictest words that this gentle kid could unleash. However, Will and the girl seem not to care at all. I didn't come here because I want to.
時間の無駄だから
We're wasting time. Let's move onwards.
ライト
Right.
このゲームに
Try
挑
and
み
beat
なさい
this game.
ゲームマスター
As the game master, Ben Castle, I invite you to join this game.
してあげるわ
お断りだ。
I refuse.
どうして
Why?
俺はもう
I'm retired now.
推理もミステリ
Reasoning
ー
and
も知ったこ
mysteries
と
aren't my business anymore.
何をして余生を
Why
過
do you
ごすという
intend to?
の
How do you intend to spend the rest of your
魔
life?
術師狩りの
Is
ライト
wizard hunting right going to give up witch hunting?
狐狩りでも潮干狩り
There's fox hunting and clam
俺
hunting.
がここに
I
来た
didn't come here to discuss the rest of my life with you.
断るために来た
So you came here to refuse?
ご検察いただき
Know that your powers of deduction are truly a sight to behold.
なら好きにしたらい
Then
い
do as you will.
どこへでも行け
Go
ば
wherever you
た
please.
だし
That is,
ここから
assuming you
立ち去
can
れる
leave
なら
this
話だ
place.
けれど
それで
So,
条件と報酬は
what are the terms and payment? In truth, Will had already given up from the beginning. He knew that he was incapable of refusing an invitation from the great Lady
ベ
Bancastel.
アトリーチェを殺したのは
Who killed Beatrice?
それが私の
That's my game.
報酬
In payment, I'll forgive you for your insolence and let you leave this chapel.
この
退屈を愛さない
I heard that witches who have no love for boredom are very fond of insolent speech.
それは
That's only for hags who've tired of life after 1,000 years.
私はまだまだ
I'm
若い
still plenty young, so I want to. So what I love to do to rude men like
どんな
yourself
過酷な
is
運命を
dream up
閉じ込めて
horrible
やる
fates in which to
武装
trap
する
you.
ことを愛するの
それで
So,
敵は誰だ
who's the enemy?
いないわ
There is none.
妨害などするわ
There's
け
no one to stand in your way.
このゲームを
We just want to sit back and watch you make your beautiful checkmate in this game.
仲間も良い
I've even found you an ally.
それが
That's what this Leon is for. After hearing that name spoken out of the blue, Leon frowned once more. Apparently, they were moving things along without Leon's knowledge or understanding, which was truly irritating.
リオンは
Leon is a member of the Ushiromiya family.
後ろ宮家の
Since
大
no
好き
one in the family knows you,
心強い
Leon,
味方と
knows
な
you,
ってくれるでしょう
Leon should prove to be a useful ally.
何の話か分かりかねますが
I fail to understand what you're talking about,
何もご
but I
協力
can't
は
help
でき
you
ません
with anything unless I know the details.
だそうだ頼もしい限りだな
There, see, with help like this, you'll be a piece of cake.
私と
Entertain
我が
me
主を楽し
and my
ませ
master, wizard
魔
hunting,
術師なり
right?
のライトあうあう
Oh
わ
wow, maybe a polite theater goer,
私を
but I
退屈
might
する
throw popcorn at you if I get bored. Got that? Will scratched at his head with a displeased look on his face. He wasn't at all interested in getting involved, but by now he realized that he couldn't possibly disobey Berncastle's orders. Then he approached the casket and pointed at its rose-filled
ベアトリー
insides.
チェ殺人事件の依
You
頼と
asked
の
me
こと
to
だが
solve the case of Beatrice's murder, but
バンダイン20冊
Van Dyne's 20th rule. Mamma mia. Van Dyne's 20 rules. Rule
死
7.
体なき事件
It is forbidden to have a crime without a corpse.
悪魔の証明
That's a devil's proof.
棺にないだ
Maybe
けじゃ
it
ない
just isn't inside the casket.
死体が存在しない
Unless you can prove that no corpse exists, this is a
これはミ
mystery.
ステリー
Rule 1. It is forbidden to have a crime without all clues presented. Don't worry, everything is gathered here. There was no change to Will's unsatisfied expression, but he seemed to have understood that everything was at least in order. From the moment he was summoned by an uninhibited, fickle and cruel Great Witch of the Senate, a mere inquisitor like him was bound to be treated as no more than an underling. He had never possessed a way to refuse her. So, you want me to find out who killed the owner of this empty casket? Fine, I accept. However, you let me do things my way. As you like. First off, I need to make you understand what's going on. Yes, that would be a great relief. Leon's face was a goulash of displeased expressions, seeming nonplussed, angry and confused all at the same time. Over here, it'd be faster to see for yourself. Wonderful. Please lead the way. Will signaled with his chin for Leon to follow him and spun around. After snorting once in an unsatisfied manner, Leon followed Will while looking deeply skeptical of the latter's ability to explain any of this in a way that would make sense. As she watched the pair leave the chapel, Bencastel sneered silently at them with a cold smile on her face. As the Miko of the Great Witch of Theatre going, drama and spectating, feathering, something our Aurora and the Witch of Miracles, I, Bencastel, announced the start of this game. The tale's title is Requiem of the Golden Witch. It's been a tale fitting for Beato's funeral. Well now, let's see just how you drag out the guts. After watching the pair leave the chapel, Bencastel's form evaporated into empty air just as she had arrived. All that remained was an unpleasant cackling. Outside, it was still raining. When Canon saw the guest and the head successor approaching the reception desk, he bowed deeply. Good work. You can take a break now, so would you mind leaving? It's Canon. Yes, as you wish. Canon bowed deeply, then disappeared. You don't bother to remember the name of your servants? Our family has many young servants coming in and out, and they are usually replaced quite frequently. Anyway, what's going on and how are you going to explain it to me? Who are you and what business do you have with this family? Of course, I'm not really in need of a satisfying explanation. I'd just be happy for you to head on home. There is no going home. Not for me, not for anyone. Could you please give it a rest? Stop speaking in confusing riddles like that all the time. Even I have limits to my patience. If you don't want me to see you off, should I call Genji or Goda? Stop talking. Look at this. Yes, I can see what it is. It's one of the memorial roses. Are you going to show me some kind of magic trick? Will took one of the flower offerings, then showed it to Leon, as if to demonstrate that there were no mechanisms of tricks. Then he slowly lifted it upwards. Watch. Yes, I'm watching. Is a dove going to fly out of it? Or is it going to be flags and fireworks? Will threw the rose. Anyone would have expected it to fly in an arc and land in some puddle amid the wind and rain. The betrayal of that expectation struck Leon dumb. Initially, the rose Will had thrown had suddenly flown in an arc. It swished rapidly through the air. However, as soon as he was about to pass from the shade onto the eaves into the rain, it stopped right in midair, as though the air surrounding it had turned into syrup. That wasn't all. As it hung in midair, the rose's beautiful golden petals began to darken one after another, and it became a black husk like burnt charcoal. And even after this had happened, it remained suspended there in the air. What sort of trick is this? Don't move! Leon had moved closer and tried to touch the remains of the rose, which still hung in the air. Will had roughly blocked the way with his arms. It was as though he was telling Leon that leaving this place meant certain death. This chapel has been cut off from the fragment. We are currently locked within a maelstrom of compressed time. What do you mean by that? Explaining is a pain, so I'll give you the short version. Basically, unless we play along with our witch's game, no one can leave this place. What are you talking about? The funeral is already over. I'm sure some people will want to return to the mansion or the guest house. We can't be locked up in here. You got a problem. That witch is the one to hate. Being stuck in a place like this isn't any more pleasant for me. That girl's your friend, right? Make her stop all this weirdness. She's probably sitting in a spectator's seat with a bucket of popcorn by now. Even if I call her, she won't come. What on earth is going on? The short sentence described all of Leon's feelings at that moment. However, Leon had seen the rose wither in an instant in the rainy darkness. Leon tried doing the same thing with another rose, but the effect was exactly the same. No one would want to use their own body to test this fearsome something that could make the roses crumble instantly. There's only one way for us to be released from here. We'll have to play along with Bercastel's game. You mean the one about to kill Beatrice? That's what she's telling us to investigate. If you could tell me about it, it'd make things go more quickly. The fickle witch will be totally satisfied. You'll be able to get rid of the two of us, and I get to go to my home in time for my date with Diana. If I kept her waiting too long, she'll start tearing up the sofa again. Who killed Beatrice, you say? That's hardly something to go barging into a funeral and start asking the family about. Questioning the family of the deceased is one of the basics of the mystery genre. Just give up and accept it. I do know that Beatrice is the mistress of Kinzo, the family had. You really are a strange person. How do you know so much about this family? Are you sure you have no connection with us? Will knew so much about the Ushiromiya family because Bercastel showed him all the fragments so far. Of course, he had no sort of connection with the Ushiromiya family himself. The very plane of his existence was on a different level. However, Beatrice died a long time ago. According to Genji, she passed away before the mansion was completed, but the reason for her death is unclear. To be honest, this is the first I've heard that she was killed. Tell me about it. My name is Ushiromiya Leon. Willard. Call me Will. For the first time, Will introduced himself. The mutual introduction was finally completed, and Leon was finally able to talk with him on an even footing. However, Leon took a deep breath and looked up at the sky, wearing a vague smile. Wilson.
Will でいい。
Call me Will.
俺もリオンと呼ぶ。
I'll call you Leon. Will. To be honest, even I don't know much about this person called Beatrice.
なるほど。
I see. Guess it's called a game for a reason. If only Leon could have told him everything, revealing the truth without any effort from Will. Apparently things wouldn't be so easy after all. Everyone who enters the Ushiromiya family knows of the image, the name and the image of Beatrice. That's because of the massive portrait hanging in the entrance hall, isn't it? The portrait that was first displayed in April of 1984. Really? How is it that you know so much? Oh well, it's about time I stopped finding that odd. I'm sure you'll just start speaking in riddles again. Leon was the successor to the head and lived with the main family. Kinzo frequently chose to speak with his successor. Because of this, Leon must have been used to chatting with people who were moody or hard to follow. Deciding once and for all that getting hung up on trivialities would be nothing but a waste of time, Leon was able to converse naturally with this unknown man called Will, as though the two of them had been friends for a long time. Everyone knows Beatrice, and yet no one knows her. Kinzo is the only one who's ever met her. The head seems to be particularly upset today. I'll find a good time to introduce you to him, so I ask you that you adopt an appropriately reserved and polite attitude, Wilson. That makes things easy. I thought you would resist a bit more than that. I'm used to speaking with a family head. I've learned to accept most unreasonable situations and just go with the flow. Ben Castle had set up a barrier cutting off the chapel from the rest of the world. To destroy that, they would have to find out who killed Beatrice. For Leon, who had been made to go along with Kinzo on many an occasion, understanding this much was all that was necessary. Allora, adesso posso rispondere un paio di domande. Ma quindi non siamo più... Rosa's Confession, ok. Non siamo più su Rokkenjima? No, sì, siamo su Rokkenjima. Questa è la cappella. Un'altra entrata però sembrerebbe, non quella principale. Allora. Ah, ma aspetta! La descrizione di Jessica è diversa. Giustamente. Kraus and Natsui's second child, Leon, will succeed the headship, so Jessica dreams of pushing the family responsibility onto Leon. So Jessica dreams of pushing the family's responsibilities onto Leon and leaving for the city. Despite the large change to her environment brought about by her not longer being an only child, her personality seemed to have remained unchanged. Appears to be absent from this family's conference. Butler non ci sta a sto giro. The Ushiromiya family members were relaxed here and there around the waiting room. A light buffet-style meal had been set up, but it looked a bit stale and not particularly appetizing. Even so, the voracious kids seemed to find it intensely appealing. The cousins had set up a camp around it with Maria at the center. The adult siblings had also formed a group in a different corner. Perhaps because of Kinzo's absence, everyone seemed to be a little more relaxed. Leon? Where did you go? And who is that? Mother, I was entertaining this guest of ours. Will, this is my mother, Natsuhi. No introduction needed. I just need to hear what she has to say. Huh?
何かおっしゃいまして。
Did you say something?
いいえ、何も。
No, he said nothing.
こちらはウィルさん。
This is Wilson.
個人に縁ある
It
方だそうで
seems
す。
he knew the deceased. With a smile, Leon casually smothered over Will's words.
彼はベアトリ
He
ーチェの
wants
こと
to
を
know more
より
about
詳しく知り
Beatrice.
たがっています。母さんは
Do you know
Beatrice
anything
については
about her, mother?
リオン。
Leon, the deceased is a woman to
当時
whom
様
they
の
had
かつての恩人です。
once owed a great
そ
debt.
してそれ
Nothing
以上
more,
に
nothing less.
この葬儀は
This funeral is a ceremony for the head to repay the debts he made to her while she was still alive.
そう聞いていますし。
This is what I've heard, and there is nothing more to it than that.
ありがとう、母さん。
Thanks, mother.
ウィル、
Well,
母が知っ
that's
てい
all
る
my
ことは
mother
これ
knows.
だ。
Natsui was very resistant to the scandalous rumors that Kinzo, a man she greatly respected, had once had a concubine called Beatrice. However, she also understood that the scandal was probably the truth. Picking up that Natsui was in a bad mood and didn't want to talk about this anymore, Leon brought an end to that conversation before Will could say something rude again.
ウィル、こ
Will,
の礼拝堂は
this chapel is the property of our family.
当家のルールに従
You're
い
telling me to follow the family's rules.
当家の客人に
You'll
ふさわしい
speak in a
口調に改め
manner appropriate for a guest of the family,
話はすべて
and
私
you'll
を介して
conduct all of your conversations through me.
その二つを
I
守っ
must
ていただ
ask
け
you
るよ
that you
う
follow
お願い
those
いたし
two
ます。
rules.
努力すら
I'll work on that.
ベルンカス
The
テルという
indications
技
of
に巻き
this
込まれて
Ben Castle, which have caused us a great deal of
です
inconvenience.
から
Because of that, I am willing to help you.
しかし
However, both of us stand on an even footing, so make sure you don't
それは
forget
お忘
it.
れになりませんよ。
育ちがいいだけ
I
の
thought you were just some pampered rich
な
kid.
かなか言うな
You've got guts.
これでも
I must be prepared to shoulder the Ushiromiya family's future after all.
分かった
Got
仲良
it.
く事件を
Let's
解
solve
決
this
しよう
crime together.
ワトソン
Watson. Watoson.
ご協力いただけて嬉
I'm
しい
glad
で
to
す。
have your cooperation.
愛病のダイ
I
アナを
wouldn't
待たせないため
want.
にも
I wouldn't want to keep your dear cat Diana
餌
waiting.
の時間は大丈夫ですか？
Don't you need to feed her soon?
今日は山盛りにしてある
I gave her extra food today,
多少は大丈
so
夫
she should be good for a while.
よく
I'm surprised you realized Diana was a cat.
ソファーを引っか
I
えて
figured a
待ちわび
woman
に
who
ついているのは
scratches the sofa when you keep her waiting would be a bit too eccentric.
それで
So,
まずは誰に話を？
who will you talk to first?
誰でもいい
Anyone,
全員だ
everyone.
あそこにいるのは
Those over there are
Kraus
Kraus siblings, right?
向かって
To the
右
right,
からエヴァおばさん、
to the right, to the left. From right to the left, you have Aunt Eva, Uncle Hideyoshi.
あちらが
Over there is
Rudolph
Uncle Rudolph, Aunt Kirie.
そしてあちら
And
が
over there is
後ろ宮ローザ
Shiromi Rosa.
少女時代に
When
森
she
を
was a
去り
girl, she once got lost in the forest and bumped into a woman calling herself Beatrice in a hidden mansion.
驚くまいとは思っていま
I
す
know
が
I shouldn't be surprised anymore,
本当にあ
but
なたは
you
何も知
really
ってい
do
る。
know everything, don't you?
お前もその話は
But
知って
you
いる
know about that story too.
今日彼女
I
がそう
managed
話して
to
いるのを
overhear
聞
her
きました
saying that today.
辛そうな話
It
でし
looked
た
as
ので
though it was bothering her, so I pretended not to hear.
優等生だな
A real model student you
紹
are.
介してくれ
Introduce
話
me.
を聞きたい
I want to ask about it.
辛そうな話でしたので
You're asking this of the model student who pretended not to hear because it might be a painful topic. Even this outrageous arrogance is nothing compared to Kinzo. After muttering this several times mentally, Leon shrugged and nodded at Will.
あら、
Oh,
次期
it's
当主
our
様じゃ
great
ない。
successor.
そちらの方は
And who is this?
ああエヴァおばさん
Aunt Eva.
こちらはウィル
This
さん
is
個人
Wilson.
のため
He
に
came
献
to
花に
offer
訪れてくれ
flowers
ま
for
し
the
た
departed.
んなことはどうでもいい
But who cares about that?
Beatrice
Tell me
is
everything you know about.
個人と後ろ宮
He
家の関わり
says
につ
he
いて
wants to know about the deceased connection to the Ushiromiya family. Leon spoke with a bright smile while pinching Will's butt. Will silently protested as though saying, even for a gag, that hurts. But Leon just played dumb and smiled at Eva like a model student.
後ろ宮家との
A
関わり
connection to the Ushiromiya
で
family?
もね。
Well, what is there to say?
後ろ宮家と
It's
父親よ
probably
り
more
お父さんとの
accurate to
関わ
say
り
her
知るべきだろう
connection
な
to father.
正直に言えばいい
I
の
can
さ
be honest
親
here.
父の愛
She
人
was dad's mistress.
愛人なんて
If you call her that, Natsu-san will yell at you again.
恩人
He's indebted to her, right?
そうやな。
Yeah, of course.
こんな具合ですが
Well, there you have it.
ローザ以外には
I
興
have
味
no
ない。
interest in anyone but Rosa.
ローザおばさんは
I do believe that you said you have met with Beatrice, Aunt Rosa. This whole time Rosa had been hanging her head. Leon's word made her shoulders quiver.
今日になって急に言い
She
出した
just
のよ
suddenly came out with it
ちょっと
came out with it
信じられない
today.
話だわ
It's a bit hard to believe.
本当なのよ
It is the truth.
ベアトリーチェが
I
私が殺した
killed
の
Beatrice.
事件解決だ。
Great, our work here is finished.
早計です
Don't get ahead of yourself. Rosa broke down crying and laid her head on the table. Kiria and Hideyoshi tried to console her.
ロッケン島は
Rokkenjima is
うっすらとした
covered by
森
a
に包まれ
dense
て
forest.
私たちが知っ
We
ている
only
の
know
は
about
そのうちの
one
ごくわず
tiny
か
portion of it.
屋敷と
Just the
バラ
mansion,
庭
the rose
そして
garden, and the
船
little
着き場に
path
向かう
that
ちょっ
leads
と
to
し
the
た林
arbor.
道だけ
Since ages ago, there have been stories about how Dad built a hidden mansion somewhere in the vast forest that no one knew about. Questa canzone? And that he had his mistress living there. Rain si chiama. Madonna, spacca.
ローザさんは多分
Rosa-san probably came upon that hidden mansion by chance.
しかし
But
どうして
Aunt
ローザおばさん
Rosa,
が
why would you say you killed Beatrice?
私が連れ出さなけれ
If
ば
I hadn't taken
彼
her
女は
out,
死なずに済んだ
she never would have died.
彼女は無垢な
She
ひよ
was
こ
so
のように
innocent, like a chick.
私が連れ出した
I took her out and she followed along obediently.
何も疑わず
She stayed right behind me, trusting me completely.
私が
Because I made her take such a dangerous path. Did you make her walk that way because you were hoping she'd slip and fall from that cliff?
そんなつもりはなかった
I never meant to do that. I just thought she'd like to see the ocean. No,
歩きづら
it
そう
just
だ
looked like the path would be hard to walk, and I thought it would be easier going if we went down the cliffs first.
それは殺した
That's not what killing someone means.
事故だ。
It was an accident.
私が連れ出さなければ
It was an
会わなかった
accident
事
she
故よ
never would have had if I hadn't brought her with me. Right?
私のせいなの
It's my fault.
それに私は
And then I abandoned
血まみれ
her
の彼女を
while
見
she
捨
was
てて逃げ
covered
帰っ
in
てしまっ
blood
た
and ran home.
あんたのせいじゃね
It isn't your fault.
ベアトリーチェは
Beatrice had never
海を
seen
一
the
度も見た
ocean
こと
before.
がなかった。それを
You showed it
あんたが
for the
初めて見
first
せた。
time ever.
つい浮かれて
She was probably so excited that she happened to take a bad step.
どうしてあなたがそれを
ベアトリーチェは
Beatrice is grateful to you for what you did. Of course, she doesn't hate you for it.
そうかしら
Really?
本当に
Is
そう
that
なのかしら
really true?
柵の外の世界へ出たいと懇願したのは彼女だ。
She was the one who begged to see the world outside the fence,
お
right?
前はその
Though
夢
it was only for a
を
short
束の間で
while,
叶えたんだ。
you made that dream of hers come true.
俺がベアトリーチェなら
If I were Beatrice,
束の間の時間を
I would
お
thank
前に
you for that
感謝する
short
んだ。
bit of time.
なのにお
If
前が
she knew that you've been suffering all this time for it,
申し訳な
she'd
く
probably feel bad herself.
ベアトリーチェは
Beatrice is grateful for what you did.
海が青い
You're the one who taught her that the sea is
教え
blue.
てくれたあんたをな。
それは本当に
Is that true?
俺が保証する。
I guarantee it. Will made that statement openly and boldly. No one could tell how Rosa took those words. However, they had apparently been enough to remind her to take a handkerchief out of her pocket and wipe her eyes.
ありがと
Thank
そ
you.
の言葉は
Even now, Beatrice is whispering those words to you.
あんたに囁いてる。
you. Rosa wiped her eyes with the handkerchief one more time and hung her head. It no longer looked like a fit of sobbing, but more as though she was speaking with Beatrice of that day within her heart. One last time. Madonna Will, devi fare terapia tutti quanti comunque.
無責任な言葉を
Tu dovresti fare il giro e sistemare tutti quanti i tizi qua dentro. That was a lot of confidence you put behind the claim you can't back up.
責任がなければ
Back up?
女を
Is
慰め
it
ること
really
もできない
necessary to comfort a woman?
多少は見直しまし
I
た
misjudged you a little. For how many years had this tormented Rosa? Now for the first time, Rosa would probably be able to face that innocently smiling Beatrice who had seen the ocean for the first time in her life. She was the only one who could forgive Rosa. Now the two of them could finally speak together.
どなたか存じない
I
けれ
don't
ど
know who you are, but thank you.
彼女は私
I
を許
wonder
して
if
く
she
れるかしら
forgives me.
あんたは20年
You've
近くもそれを悩んだ
you've beat yourself up for it for nearly 20
長
years.
すぎだ
That's far too long.
彼女はもう勘弁
She's
しろと
telling
言
you
って
to
た
knock it off.
そうですよ
That's
ローザお
right,
ばさん
Aunt
あなた
Rosa.
が悲しめば
The
悲
more
し
you
むほど
grieve, the sadder Beatrice would be.
ベア
あなたまで
You too.
ありがとう
Thank
私
you.
には
I
私
don't
が
know
許
if
さ
I
れる
will
か
be
どうかわからな
forgiven,
いけれど彼女が許し
but
て
I'll
くれる
keep
か
on
どうか
speaking to my heart to see
胸の
whether
中に
she'll
問いかけ
forgive
て
me
みる
or
こと
not.
にするわ二人とも
Thanks, you
あ
too.
りがとう恥ずかしいところを
Sorry
見せて
for
ごめんなさい
showing you such an embarrassing side of me.
綺麗事を言った人
And
の
I'm
名
sorry
の若ね
to
を
say
どうし
this right after saying something so
聞
pretty,
かせてほしい
but I want you to talk to me.
当時のこと
Tell me what happened back then.
ウィルさん
Wilson!
ありがとう
Thanks,
大丈夫
but it's alright.
話すわ
I'll talk.
誰にも話さずに
Hiding this and keeping quiet about it for so long might have
私
been
の
my
一番の
greatest
罪
sin.
なのかもしれないから
お前がベアトリーチェに
Exactly
出会った
when was it that you met
正確には
Beatrice?
いつ頃なのか
Upon hearing this question, Rosa closed her eyes lightly, reaching back to a past that she didn't want to remember.
20年ほ
It
ど
was
昔の
about
話よ
20 years ago.
20
20 or wait, it might have been 19 or 18 years ago.
ごめんなさい長いこ
I'm
と
sorry, I
無
tried to
理に
force myself to forget it for so long that I've nearly forgotten that part completely.
1967
It should
年
have
のことの
been
はずだ
1969, 60, well, not 1967. Ronova had guaranteed that with the red truth in the third game.
そうね
That's
多分
right. It was
1967
probably
年頃
about 1967.
あの時の出
I
来
can
事は
remember what
写
happened
真
as
のように
clearly as a
鮮明に覚
picture.
えてる忘れられない
I'll never forget.
辛かったら
If it's tough for you,
無理に話す必要はありませんね。
don't feel like you have to tell us.
写真のように鮮明に
Yes, clear as a picture if you don't mind.
痛えぞリオン
Damn it, that hurts, Leon.
何のことやら
What does?
家庭教師が私の内緒
Took it,
話を
I
母に
took
告
it
げ口して
very
いたの
hard when I found out that my tutor had told my mother about something I'd shared in confidence. I lost control of myself and ran deep into the
森の奥へ
forest.
奥へ
This tale has been told in a previous fragment. Back when Rosa was just a kid, she had gone deep into the forest, found a hidden mansion and met with a mysterious woman who called herself Beatrice.
ほんの少し
But that
分け入れる
forest
こと
is
すら
so
難
thick,
しい
it's
あの
hard
深
to
い森を
just move around in it.
自分でも驚くわ
I even surprised
あんな
myself
うっそうとした森
to
を
think that I
よくも
made
あんな
it
に
so
深く
far into such a dense
たくさ
forest.
んの梢や鋭い葉っぱで
I
苛ま
was
れた
tormented by twigs and sharp leaves over and over
で
again.
も
However, that wasn't enough to bother me on that day.
森の奥へ消えること
After
で
all, I wanted to disappear into the forest and vanish forever.
もし本当に
If
森
by
の奥
some
に魔女
chance
の
there
館があった
really was a witch mansion in the depths of the
自分
forest,
を幸
I
せな
hope
国へ
that she
連れ
might
て行っ
take
て
me to the land of happiness, or else turn me into a frog and make me a resident of the forest.
そしてあんたは
So, you then reached the Eden Mansion, Guadorian,
そこで
and met a woman who called herself Beatrice.
ええ
Yes, I did.
そのベアトリーチェは
Was that Beatrice the same as the one in the portrait?
え
Yes,
え同一人物だった
they were the same person.
美しい青い
Beautiful blue eyes,
黄金の髪
golden hair,
黒いドレス
a black
ま
dress.
さにあの肖
It
像
truly
画
was the subject of that portrait.
私はあの
When
肖像
father
画をお父
first
さん
had it
が
hung,
私が忘れ
I
ようとあがいた
realized
20
that
年の
20
月日
years I've spent trying to forget must have seemed just as long for
あ
father,
るいはそれ以上の
if not
日々
even
があったと気
longer,
づき
and I was racked by even greater guilt.
それ
Stop there.
本当にローザさん
Are
の
you
出会った
sure
ベア
this
ト
is
リ
the
ーチ
same Beatrice that Rosa-san met? Immediately, Kira spoke the question that Will had been thinking of. It would be too rash to assume that the Beatrice Kinzo met was the same Beatrice as the one Rosa met. The time and generation were different for each.
ベアトリーチェってのは
Beatrice is supposed to be the lady of leisure who lent Dad all that gold shortly after the war, right?
お父さんは
Using Beatrice's gold as a foundation, father revived the Shiromiya family and got super rich.
そして
Then he bought Rockenjima and moved over. Rosa-san's meeting must have been at least 10 years after that.
10トンの黄
A
金を自在
woman
に
with
できる
free
ご婦人
control
が
over 10 tons of
この
gold
程度のわけはない
could hardly be some little girl.
ましてや
And
ローザが
10 more
会った頃には
years passed
それ
after
か
the
らさらに
time
10年以上が経過して
after and 10 more years passed after that before she met
ロ
Rosa.
ーザ
Rosa?
あんたの会ったベアトリーチ
About how old did the Beatrice you met look?
当時の私よりも
She
年上
looked
に
older than I was at the time, but even so, it looked as though she might be on the cusp of adulthood.
そう
Yes, exactly the sort of age of the Beatrice in the portrait.
中年
Did she look middle-aged or past her prime?
大人か子供か
If
って
I
言
had
わ
to
れて
call her an adult or a
明らかに子
child,
供に近
she
い年
was
齢だ
clearly closer to being a child.
中年なんてとんでもない
There's no way she was middle-aged.
だからそれじゃお
And
かしい
isn't
のよ
that strange?
あんたの会った
We
ベア
have
ト
the
リーチェ
Beatrice you
と
met
お父
and
様
the
に
Beatrice
黄
you
金を
gave
与えた
father
ベ
the
アトリ
gold.
ーチェ年齢が
But
合
their
わないの
ages
よ
don't match.
つまり
In other words,
別人と
they're
いうこと
different people.
よく似た同じ名前
Different
の
people who look
別人
very similar and have the same name.
娘かもし
It
れん
might have
な
been her daughter.
親子なら
It makes sense for them to look alike if they were mother and child.
愛人の娘
Mistress
あ
daughter.
りえるわ
It is
黄金
possible.
を授けたベアトリ
Perhaps
ー
father
チェ
had an illegitimate child with the Beatrice who gave him the gold.
それが
So, the one
Rosa
Rosa bumped into was Beatrice II.
年齢的つ
Makes
つまは
those ages work out nicely.
なるほど
I see. In other words, there are two people called Beatrice. Kinzo secretly raised his mistress' child in a hidden mansion. That would make logical sense. Everyone nodded, agreeing. However, Will's expression was slightly unsatisfied and he scratched at his head.
どうやらこの葬儀は
So it would seem that this funeral exists for the two Beatrices who couldn't hold a ceremony for because he kept them in secret.
ローザ
Also,
思い出したくね
I know you probably don't want
事
to
故の時の
remember,
話を頼
but
む
tell me about the incident, the
ベア
accident.
トリーチェが転落した
After Beatrice fell, was she still breathing?
いいえ
No.
目を大きく見開
Her
いて
eyes were open wide.
頭から真っ逆
She
さま
fell
に落ちて
upside down head first and knocked her head against a sharp crag on the rocky beach.
それも
And she fell from such a height.
頭部は陥没
Her
して
skull was split and caved
美
inwards.
しい黄金の髪が
Beautiful golden hair was stained red with blood almost instantly.
一目見て
What
死んだ
sort
と確信
was
で
it?
き
The
る
sort
外
of
傷だ
wound
った
that showed the grimace that she was undoubtedly dead?
割
Yes,
れた頭の中
I
身を
saw it inside of her cracked
そ
head.
れも
It had caved in deep enough to fit your fist inside it.
あれを見て生きててほし
No
いな
one
んて
could be naive
いくらなんでも虫
enough
が
to
良すぎ
see
る
that and still hope she was alive.
ウィル
Will,
それ以上聞く
do
必
you
要はあり
really
ます
need
か
to ask any more?
事故じゃもういい
That's enough for the time of the
それ
accident.
からあんたはどうした
What did you do afterwards? I dashed away at full speed. I wasn't even thinking about calling for help. I just wanted to escape from that place as fast as I could. Half crazed, sobbing and out of breath, I kept on running about at random. Eventually, I came across a familiar lion statue. Oh, the one in front of the chapel? No, the one behind it. Anyway, I made it back to the mansion. I couldn't tell anyone and I didn't want to. I stayed quiet until nightfall. It was so horrible of me. If I had heard it and told someone, they might have brought her a first aid kit and she might have been saved. How is a first aid kit going to help with a crushed cranium? You didn't kill her, don't worry about that anymore. Then, what did you do next? That night, I turned over in my bed so many times. I couldn't sleep. Late that night, I quietly called Genji-san on the phone and told him. What did he say? He told me to let him handle everything and to speak of this to no one. I spent the next several days terrified that father would call for me and scold me brutally. But he didn't. Genji-san kept on doing his job quietly, just like normal. Father stayed locked up in his study, not knowing any of it. At the very least, none of us ever heard about it. Genji-san probably managed to clean everything up nicely. After all, I expect they couldn't let knowledge of that child go public. Even if she wasn't a legitimate child, she was his own flesh and blood. It must have been tough for father not being able to hold a real funeral for her. I guess that's why we are having this funeral. And then? That's all I know. And that's all I know too. I'm not hiding anything else. I've told you everything. I swear it. Will scratched his head, letting his gaze wander. He had taken Rosa a lot of determination to make this confession, but it was nothing particularly special for Will. It had been little more than a review of information he already knew. Thanks, Aunt Rosa. Is that enough for you, Will? You satisfied? That's enough. It was a nice review. To Will, Rosa's memories gave all information that was already known. This was the first time he had heard about that running back to the mansion after Beatrice fell to her death, but none of it was particularly surprising. Beh, c'è la parte di Genji che non sapevamo. Apparently Rosa didn't know any more than this. If he wanted to learn something beyond the fragments given to him by Ben Caster, he would need to find new testimony. Se fossi in Will adesso andrei da Genji. Leon, tell Kinzo that I want to talk to him. It looks like we won't get anywhere without asking the man himself. Where are you going? Off to cool my head and organize my thoughts. Don't follow me. Well, pardon me for asking. Please take your time. After giving an elegant bow, ancora questo bow, Leon made a face, tongue sticking out. Ti adoro. Unless Will had eyes on the back of his head, he couldn't have seen this last bit. Cute. Andiamo. Will returned to the chapel by himself. The cold air and the monotonous sound of the rain were comforting. So, how's the game? And he had come here for a little peace and quiet. No sooner that he had let out a sigh of relief than that voice rang out again. That's one for you to answer. It was as though she had been sitting there all along. Ben Castle appeared on top of the altar once more. Apparently she found this particular altar extremely comfortable.
バトラは無能で
Battler annoyed me over and over with his incompetence.
それに比べ
You're very competent compared to him, so it's a lot easier to relax.
後ろ宮バトラの時と
Unlike Ushiromiya Butler's games, I have nothing standing in my way.
気楽なもんさ
It's easy.
もうそういうゲームは
That sort of game has already
物語
ended.
は二度
Tales can be enjoyed
一度
twice.
目はめでて
First, you love
二
them,
度目は腹を
then
引き
you
裂い
tear
て
out their guts.
俺を肉屋だと思って
You think I'm a butcher?
どう
Well,
ベアトリーチェ
do
殺
you
しの犯人は分か
do
り
you
そう
think you know who killed Beatrice?
ローザの告白は過去の
Rosa's confession is something I already know from a previous
新し
game.
い情報はない
There was no brand new information.
進展はゼロ
We're still at square one.
後ろ宮金蔵が
Unless
本当の
Ushiromiya
ことをされ
Kinzo tell us what really happened, we won't get any further than
ま
this.
さか俺が
Don't tell me that you
金蔵を
sweet
口説
talking
こうとして
Kinzo.
真相を告白させるっての
Don't tell me that sweet talking Kinzo into spilling the
ゲームに
beans
含まれてる
is
とは
all
言い出さ
part
ない
and
か
parcel of this game.
そんなの退屈で
If
死
he
んでしま
were,
う
I'd die of boredom.
真実を語らぬ
Kinzo
金
refuses to
蔵
speak of the truth and is himself the king protected by his
あ
castle.
なたのゲームの
But it
障
wouldn't
壁
be
に
any
座って
fun to have that stand in the way of your game.
拷問はやらね
I want
え
torture.
俺の流儀だ
It's not my style.
分かってる
I know
ゲー
that.
ムマスターと
As
し
the
て
game master, I
あん
will
たに
grant you
力を与え
power.
るわ金蔵から
So,
真実を
so
得られ
that
る
you
よう
can
に
get the truth from Kinzo, of course. Still wearing shoes, Ben Castle stepped into the casket, picked up one of the flowers that had been set as an offering, and blew hard as though scattering the fluff from a dandelion. Or dandelion. When she did, a single petal broke off and drifted down towards Will, no longer gold, but with the shine of transparent crystal.
探偵権限か
The detective's authority?
な
What's
そ
that
の
pathetic
間抜けな
ability?
違う
No,
それは
this is your invitation to the auditorium.
感激者権限だ
Theater-going authority?
それを元老院の中で
Granting that is supposed to be forbidden without authorization from the Senate.
私を
I'm
私
granting
の
it
ゲーム版
on my game board.
誰が禁止する
Who's going to stop me? Boia interessante. Though the crystal flower petal danced in the wind, it wouldn't fly away anywhere until Will accepted it. Will remembered how useless it was to argue with witches, and he snatched it up. When he did, the petal flashed brightly for an instant, melting into Will's palm, and disappeared.
せいぜい私を楽しませなさい
Entertain me, if you
つ
can,
いでにあなたも
and
楽
try
し
to
む
and try and enjoy
こ
yourself.
のベアトリー
You
チェの
must
ゲーム
also be
版に払わせ
interested
て
in
どう
seeing
な
what
って
the
る
guts of Beatrice's
あんたに
game
興
board
味ある
look
でし
like,
ょ
right?
ねえよ
Not really. After Will's rude answer, Ben Castle vanished into thin air, leaving behind an obnoxious laugh. Non lo so, Giovanni, mi spiace se sta laggando. A me dice frame droppati 0. Non ho alcun tipo di problema, proprio veramente frame persi 0. In tutte quante le parti. Ok, boh, bene. Comunque interessante. Qualcosa che è molto più potente della Detectives Authority. La Theater Going Authority. After clicking his tongue, Will turned around, visibly annoyed. When he did, he felt as though his gaze crossed that of a shadowy figure standing by the door in front of him that led outside.
誰だ
Who's there?
失礼しました
Pardon me.
声が聞こえて
I
る
heard a voice, so I
どちら
wonder
様か
who
と
it
思いま
was.
して
シャノンか
Ah,
今
Shannon.
度はお前が受
You're
付をしてい
running
る
the reception desk this time?
はい
Yes,
カノン君と交
I've been
代で
taking
受付を担当
I've been
させていた
taking
だい
it
て
in
おります
turns with Kanon-kun to run the reception desk.
カノンは
Ah, and where is Kanon?
先ほど
A short while ago, he was ordered by
リオン
Leon-sama
様に休みを
to
取る
take a
ようご命
break,
令を
so
賜りま
he's
したので
resting now.
今
お前も
So
リオンに面識が
you
ない
don't know Leon either.
いえそんな
Of course, I...
後ろ宮リオンは
Ushiromiya Leon is the successor to the head and the only one permitted at the silver
10
ring.
年も務めたお
Why
前
are
が
you stumbling over that name when you've worked here for 10 years?
それは
That's...
安心しな
Don't
リ
worry.
オンに面識
I
が
don't
ない
recognize Leon either.
次期当主は
Kraus is supposed to be the successor to the head.
子供も
Jessica is supposed to be his only child.
リオンなんてやつが後ろ宮家
There hasn't been a single fragment with anyone named Leon in the Ushiromiya family. Upon hearing that Will didn't recognize Leon either, Shannon looked back at him in surprise. Apparently, she was a bit relieved to find that she wasn't going crazy by herself. However, her expression quickly grew uncertain once more.
ここは
Where,
どこ
where
な
is
んで
this
しょう
place?
後ろ宮家の
I
礼
think
拝
it's
堂と
the
思います
Ushiromiya family chapel. However, something feels different about it.
それに
Also, I never knew that someone named Leon-sama existed.
なのに
And yet, Madame, Kraus-sama, the master, Milady, and all of the relatives are all talk as though it's perfectly natural.
話をされています何が
I just don't understand what's happening.
わからなくて
Ma fammi fare una cosa perché mi dà un po' fastidio questa. Io avevo già le voci alte, ma di più.
リオンはベルンカステルに
Leon
降りた
is a
小旗
piece placed by Ben Castel.
やつを置くために
She also said that she'd switched to a larger cat box to place that piece.
それだけでな
On top of that, it seems this world isn't a proper world, but one made out of several different fragments sewn together. It's as though this is a special stage set up specifically for this game. I'm sure she's nodding at my thoughts right now, laughing and chomping down popcorn.
この世界のお前は何
How
年
long have
こ
you
こに
worked
勤めている
here in this world?
10年です
10 years. I see. So it really is a special stage. After all, right when I entered the chapel, I spotted Kinzo. If Shannon has worked here for 10 years, then this is 1986, the stage of Beato's game. In that case, Kinzo shouldn't exist. However, he definitely was here a few minutes ago. Ben Castle promised that all of the information needed for reasoning was gathered here. She must have crammed all manner of stuff in here to make that true. I see, so it really is a special stage.
お前はそれだけの
You have served the Ushiromiya family for many years.
なら
So, just how much do you know about
どれだけ
Beatrice?
知っている
親方様の
I know
深く愛
that
さ
the
れた
master loved her deeply,
くらいにしか
but other than that,
それだけか
is that all?
あとその
Um,
六軒島の
they
夜
say
の
that
主
she's the master of Rokkenjima's night.
そうだ
That's right. The name of the ghost rumored to wander the mansion night after night is also Beatrice. That brings the number of Beatrices to 3. The first is the Beatrice from more than 30 years ago, who is said to have given Kinzo the gold. Then the second is the Beatrice from 20 years ago, who met with Rosa. And the third Beatrice of the ghost stories, who is rumored to be the master of the night on Rokkenjima.
古エリカの推理は正しい。
Although Erika's reasoning was probably correct,
もともと
he started out as a legend of the evil spirits of on Rokkenjima.
そこに金蔵
Later
の
on, elements such as Kinzo's occult hobbies and the name and portrait of the mysterious woman Beatrice
自分が次第に
and the
神様に
epitaph got mixed in, and it all fused into the legend of the Golden Witch.
そして夜の闇
And
が
so the darkness of the night gained a personality of a witch. That's the third Beatrice.
それ
This is the veil the serial killer hides behind. Apparently she didn't understand a word of Will's sudden monologue. Shannon tried to follow along, but she seemed to be having difficulty.
無理に理解するな
Don't waste your time trying to understand.
頭痛になる
You'll just get a headache.
申し訳ござ
My
いません。
apologies.
カノンもリオン
Canon
のことを
doesn't
知らない
know Leon either, right?
はい。カノン
Yes.
君も
Canon
私
Kun
と
was
同
the
じで
same
し
as me. Shannon and Canon, huh?
カノンも呼んで
Call Canon over here. I want to talk to the pair of you about something. When Will said these words, Shannon's face went blank and her eyes went wide.
申し訳ございません。
My apologies.
受付を開けるこ
We
とは
aren't
許
allowed
さ
to
れて
leave
お
the
りません
reception
ので、
desk unmanned,
私
so
には呼びに
I
行くこ
can't
ともで
leave
き
to
ま
go
せん。
get him.
なら誰
Then
か代わり
find
を
a
呼んできて
replacement and
受
have
付を
them
代わ
take
らせる
over the reception desk until you get back.
あんたとカノン
You, me,
と
and
俺リオ
Canon.
ンを知らない
We,
三人
the
で
three people
一
who
緒
don't know
に話
Leon,
がしたい
need to talk.
受付は一人でいいと
We've
仰
been
せつかっ
told
てお
that
りま
one
す。
person is enough to run the reception desk.
二人いちゃいけねえ
But
とは
no
言わ
one
れて
told
ねえ
you
はず
there was anything wrong with two people manning it, right?
本日は人手が足りま
We
せ
are
ん
low
の
on
で、
helpers today, so we were told that the reception desk does not require two people manning it.
誰がそう命じた
Who gave you that order?
金蔵か
Kinzo?
クラウスか
Kraus?
それともリオン
Or
か
was it Leon?
確認する
I will ask about it.
私の命令権者です。
It was the one who orders me.
私は命令に逆らえませ
I
ん。
cannot disobey orders.
その命令権者は誰
Who is this person?
そいつに交渉する
I'll negotiate with them.
交渉などできません。
You cannot negotiate.
私たちの命令権者
It
で
is
す。
the one who orders us.
ここへカノンを呼べ
Call Canon over here.
俺は拷問を
I
感
hate
激
theater going just as much as I hate torture. Slowly, Will pushed his right hand out of his pocket. When he slowly opened his fist, a small bright glow emanated from it. The flower petal Ben Castle had given him. Oh, ciao, Proccione. The flower petal Ben Castle had given him had become a glowing birthmark which sparkled. He then held that He held that hand out towards Shannon and slowly approached her.
カノンを呼
Call
べ
Canon.
お前たちに確かめ
I
たい
want to check something with you two.
お呼びできませ
I
ん。
cannot
それで
call
も
him.
なお、それをご希望ですか。
Still wish me to do so?
呼ばねえなら
If you don't call him, I'm going to watch your play.
どうしてもとおっしゃるので
If you
したら、
insist, I
特別に
can
お呼びすること
call
もでき
him
ますが。
especially. There was some kind of incomprehensible tension between the two. Will stood there, his left hand still in his pocket and his right palm glowing and stretched out towards her. Shannon just stood there, her hands still folded politely in front of her, her posture beautiful, and yet it felt oddly as though raindrops were sparkling and crackling in midair.
カノン君を呼んでまいります。
I will now call Canon-kun.
よろしいですか。
Do you wish to proceed? Will's expression had remained unchanged for the whole time. Shannon's face was still kind and gentle, and yet the tension was as icy as a frozen lake. Beginners in chess will sometimes move their king into check without noticing. One might mercilessly capture the king in such a situation, but high-level players are supposed to calmly warn beginners about their mistake. If you take one more step, you'll get captured. This was similar to that. I see. So after all...
もう分かった。
I get it.
十分だ。
That's enough.
二人で交代で。
You guys can take it in turns to run the reception desk. Slowly, Will lowered his hand.
ご理解いただきまし
Thank
て
you for
助かります
understanding. The glow slowly vanished from Will's palm. That completely incomprehensible tension melted away, like a sugar cube in water. However, nothing had changed since the beginning. Will's expressions and Shannon's expression were the same as they always had been.
おや
Oh,
おかえりですか
are you leaving? Footsteps approached them. It was Leon.
立ち話をして
I'm
い
just
ただけだ。
standing here talking.
こいつに
Just wanted to ask her something.
それは何でしょう
What could that be?
そしてそれは
Did you find what you were looking for?
ああ
Yeah.
お役に立てて
I'm honored to have been of service.
それは残念
That's a
傘
shame.
をお探しのよう
If
で
you
し
were
た
looking for an umbrella, I could have gotten you one right away.
金蔵に話はついたのか。
You convinced Skinzo.
珍しい客人が
I told him that a
挨拶をした
rare
わけで
guest
す
wanted to greet
お
him.
会いするそうです
He says he'll meet with you.
ベアトリーチェのことを聞きたい
Did you
と
tell me? Did you tell him that I wanted to ask about
そ
Beatrice?
れはあなたの仕事でしょ
Isn't that your job? With a slightly mischievous look, Leon turned away. Will scratched his head and shrugged, looking annoyed.
まあいいさ。
Huh, well,
こいつを試す
guess I'll get a chance to try this out. Will opened his right hand and showed it to Leon. It was just a hand without anything remotely remarkable about it. Leon's head tilted to the side in bafflement at this strange gesture.
ご苦労様です
Good work.
君の名前は
The
確か
name was...
シャノンです
it's Shannon.
そうだった
That's right.
シャノンです
Shannon,
引き続き
please
受付を
continue
よろし
manning
く
the
頼みます
reception desk.
肩を冷やさない
Make sure you keep warm.
ありがとうございます
Thank you very much, Leon-sama. Shannon bowed deeply in response to Leon's kind words. There was not even a trace of tension in her
参り
manner.
ましょうビル
Let's go,
せ
Will.
っかく時間をいただけ
You
たのです
won't want to miss your chance.
当主様の機嫌は空より変わりやすいですよ
The head's mood changes quicker than in autumn sky.
いってらっしゃいませ
Good luck.
行くか。
Grazie. Let's go. Ok, che ti sei perso, Andrew? Ora te lo spiego. Uscirò nei 15.
Willard さんをお連れしました
I've brought Willard-san. Kinzo and Genji could be seen in the VIP room. Kinzo was sitting back in a chair, his eyes closed as though in troubled sleep.
親方様、
My
お
lord,
客様がお見
the
えになりま
guest
し
has
た。
come to see you. Kinzo slowly opened his eyes. Those eyes were red from crying. They regained their focus and slowly fell on Will.
私が後ろ宮金蔵
I am Ushiromiya Kinzo.
ウィル
Will,
ウィラードだ。
I am
お
Willard.
悔やみ申し上げ。
Allow me to express my condolences.
ベアトリーチェの
So,
葬儀に
you've
訪
come
ねて
to
くる
visit Beatrice's funeral.
そなたは
Just
何者
who
な
are
のか
you?
誰でもない。
I'm no one.
誰とも関係ない。
I have no connections with
深
anyone.
く考えるな。
Don't think too deeply about
頭
it.
痛にならない。
You'll just get a headache.
もう少し
I
言葉
ask
遣い
that you
にご
choose
注意
your
をお願い
words
いた
a
し
little
ます
more carefully.
うんおかしな
What a
気持ち
strange
そ
guest.
れで
So,
この私に
what
何
business
を
do you have with me?
ベアトリーチェのことを聞きた
I
い。
want to ask you about Beatrice.
何
What? Kinzo's gaze grew sharp. Leon felt a bit lightheaded and wondered why this guy had to be so direct.
聞いてどうす
Why do you ask?
お前は誰
I
でも
thought
ない
I
の
thought
で
you
あ
were
る
no one.
ベアトリーチェ
Why
の
do you want to know
ことを
about
知って
Beatrice?
何の意味
What
が
purpose could it serve?
俺が
Because I am no one, I can listen to your tale without
残す
bias
ことができる
and record it.
お前はじきに
You will probably leave this world before too
そ
long.
の時
If you die
ベア
without
トリー
telling
チェのことを
anything
何
about
も書か
Beatrice,
ずに死んだのだお前のこと
your
だ
children will adorn her with their
彼らが
own
好きな考えた
fanciful
物語
tales and write them
ベア
into
トリーチェ
history.
に就職し
面白い若造だ
You entertain me, boy.
お前は遺言
You
に
think
落ち
yourself a
ろという
testament maker? A taker?
だがそれ
But
は
that is
余計
wholly
なお世話というものよ
unnecessary.
ベアトリーチェ
Beatrice is
は
mine
私だけ
alone.
のベアトリーチェだ誰が何
No
を語
matter
ろう
what anyone says,
私と姉
no
の
one
物
can
語
defile our
誰に
history.
も怪我
What
し
they say is of no consequence.
クラウスたちが
No
どう
matter how
解釈
Kraus and the others misconstrued it, it matters nothing to me.
ウィラード様
Willard-sama, the master does not like wills.
生きている
He
う
is
ち
not one to abandon anything while he still lives.
だろう
Probably
ならし
true.
からぬこととは
I
思
thought
って
it sounded a bit unlike him.
誠意あ
The
る
spirit
限り
to
あがいて
struggle onwards to our dying
人間は
breaths is what makes us
それ
human.
を早々
The
に
idea
諦め
that I
よう
would
に
give up
残
before
す
my
という
time and leave
噂が
behind a will is laughably absurd.
確かに
Yes, that does sound a bit more like you.
死ぬかもしれないか
It's
ら
not your style to ask someone to write about the past just because you feel you might die soon.
当主様は
We know how deeply you love Beatrice-sama.
私たちにとって
You are the model most worthy of respect that any of us know, and an example for us to follow in every aspect of our lives.
どうか
Please, for the sake of us wandering
いか
souls,
にして
may we learn of how you loved her to the last, how your love for her guided you throughout life,
その愛の
and the strength of the
私
love
たち
for,
に
of your
お
love
導
of
き
your
くださ
love
るよ
for
うお願
her,
いすることは
so
で
that
き
your
ないでしょう
story might guide us through our own lives.
なかなか達者だ
You're pretty good at this.
あなたが言葉を選ばない
It's
から
your
です
fault for being so tactless.
若造
Boy,
お前はベアトリーチェの
what
何
do
を
you
知
want?
っているという
What
の
do you know of Beatrice?
真に無知
A
なる
truly
者は
ignorant
関心さ
person
え
would not hold any interest at
ベ
all.
アトリーチェの
The
名を
mere
知って
fact
いる
that you
時
know
点
her
で
name
無知なる
shows
者
that
で
you
は
are
な
neither
く
ignorant
変な
nor
着物でもない
unconnected.
道理だな
Good
俺が
point.
知っているベアトリーチ
The Beatrice I know of is the woman you love, the one you met before the mansion on Rokejima was even
し
built.
かし
However, she probably departed from this world, leaving behind a daughter.
それが
That is the girl
クワ
who
ドリアン
was
で
raised
育て
in
られていた
Kuadorian.
娘だウィラード様
Willard-sama,
当六軒
there
島
is
に
no building
ク
known
ワ
as
ドリアン
Kuadorian
の
or
建物は存在
Rokejima.
いたします
そのクワド
That
リアンという
name,
名前さっ
Kuadorian.
きローザおばさ
You
んと話した
mentioned
時
it
にも
when we were talking with Aunt Rosa
そ
too.
れは一体何
What
な
in
んで
the
すか
world does it mean?
察しはついてるは
You
ず
should have an idea by now.
愛人の
It
娘
is the
の
name of the hidden mansion deep in the
六軒島の
forest
森の
where
奥
his
深くにある
mistress'
隠し
daughter
屋敷の
lived.
名だ
面白い
Interesting.
クワドリアンの
So you
名を
actually
知る
know the name of Kuadorian.
続け
Continue. You have sparked my interest. Kinzo shrugged and grinned.
クワドリアンにい
The
たのは
one living in Kuadorian was probably Beatrice's daughter.
だが
However, it seemed that you didn't think of her that way. Willard, piano.
ほ
Oh, then how did I think of her?
後ろ宮ローザは
When Shiromi Rosa went to Kuadorian, Beatrice told her a little about herself.
その中で
In that conversation, she refers to you as
これ
Kinzo.
はお前を
It
前
was
に
the
して
same when she spoke to you
彼
directly.
女はお前を
Though she
父と
said that she thought of you as a father, she didn't call you
父と
father.
呼んでいなかった呼ばなかった
She either didn't call you that or she wasn't allowed to call you that.
それが意味すること
That can
は
only mean one
一
thing.
つしか
Willard,
それは何だ
And
と
what might that be?
生まれ変わりだ。
Reincarnation.
お前は娘を
You didn't think of your
忘れ
daughter
方
as a
にだとは
child
思わなかった。
Beatrice left
死
behind.
んだベアトリ
You
ーチェ。
believed that the dead Beatrice had revived into a new body.
源氏、あん
Genji.
たはかつて
Once in the
夏日
past, you spoke in front of Natsui and the several other family members, stating that there had never been a child between Kinzo and Beatrice.
記憶にございません。
I have no memory of saying this. Of course, these games Genji probably wouldn't remember that. Cos'era il primo? Eh sì. However, near the end of the first game, when the survivors all gathered in Kinzo's study, Genji was asked whether Kinzo and Beatrice ever had a child together, and he denied it, saying, I have not heard of anything like that.
聞いたことがな
I
い。
have not heard that. In a way, it was a perfect sort of answer for one of Kinzo's confidants.
何しろ
After all, in Kinzo's eyes, she wasn't a daughter, but Beatrice reborn.
ウィル
Will,
何の話か分かり
I
ません
don't know what you're talking about, but I will not let you slander the family head.
冒涜じゃね
Oh, this isn't slander, it's
え。だ
reasoning.
が、ここは
However, I understand the heart.
ベアトリーチェはお前に
Beatrice was the woman you
最愛
loved
の女だ
most.
った。死んでも
She remained that way even after her death, for all eternity, and without fading in the slightest.
だが
However, given the child's blue eyes, beautiful blonde hair, and facial features which resembled Beatrice from a young
お
age,
前は次第に
if you had gradually began to think that she might actually be Beatrice
そ
reborn,
れはおかしいこ
that
とじゃね
wouldn't be surprising.
親方様、
My lord,
よろしいのですか
shall I throw this insolent man out? Genji asked Kinzo. For a while, Kinzo hung his head in silence as though remembering something from his own past.
娘は美しく
Your
育ち
daughter grew to be beautiful and nearly identical to her
お
mother.
前は狂気した
You
のだ
must have been ecstatic. However, it's doubtful that you were fully satisfied by this.
なぜな
After all, though she was Beatrice reborn to you,
当の本
she
人
didn't feel that way
そう
herself.
なぜその
How can you know
わ
that?
かるのか。
本人
She couldn't shake the feeling that there was something out of place about her being called Beatrice. People never feel anything out of place about the name they were given at the time of their
だが
birth.
彼女はお前
However, she did have that feeling. That must mean that she was aware that the name Beatrice was not hers. In Quadorian, she asked both Kinzo and Rosa about who she
わらわ
was.
は何者なのか
Who am
みん
I?
なは
Everyone comes Beatrice.
それは確か
And
に
that does certainly seem to be the name of a great witch, as you
偉
say.
大な魔女の名前らしいしかし
But that is not me.
それはわらわではないのだわらわに
I cannot use any magic.
はわらわは
I simply have the
そ
soul
の
of
魔
the
女の
witch,
魂を
of that witch sealed inside my
に
body.
封じられているだけなのだ
記憶は
Memory
いずれ戻ったの
would have returned.
あれは紛れも
He
なく
was
ベ
without
アトリーチェ
a
の
doubt
生まれ変わり
Beatrice reborn.
記憶は戻りつつ
Her memory was coming back bit by bit.
我が魔術の儀式
My magic rituals were helping her regain her memories one little bit at a time.
当主様
Grandfather,
驚くことじゃね
there's no need to be
え。これま
surprised.
でのゲームの情
If
報
you
を
line
並
up
べ
the
りゃ短い
information in all of the games so
そのままの
far,
答え。
this is the answer that it leads to
上
you
層の
to.
ベアトリーチェはそれを
The
指して
Beatrice on the higher plane talked about this in metaphor,
肉の体に
saying that
閉じ
Kinzo
込め
refused to let the witch's soul escape even after death, and instead caught it and locked it up in a body of
そ
flesh.
して
She also said that her power and memories had been sealed.
その解釈に
If you match that interpretation of hers to this story, it all makes sense.
ウィラード様、
Willard-sama,
親方様は
thanks to a powerful magic ritual, the master gained a reborn child of the late Beatrice-sama.
それを否定す
That
ることは
cannot be
できません
denied. I won't contradict I won't contradict the stork, and I don't intend to doubt the depths of Kinzo's love for this woman called Beatrice. It's no one's business how a person chooses to show their affection towards their only living reminder of the departed. If she grew to look more and more like Beatrice, and Kinzo's love gave rise to a new special emotion, I find that a very human reaction. You think you can understand my love? I'm not qualified to understand it. However, I'm also not qualified to deny it.
Beatrice, 私を許してくれ。
Oh, Beatrice, please forgive me. Kinzo sobbed quietly for a while, wiping away his tears. Because of love, he believed she was Beatrice reborn and raised there that way. However, somewhere in his heart, he might have felt pangs of conscience, telling him that he might be forcing his emotion on someone who wasn't really Beatrice. When the Beatrice of Quadorian had an unexpected guest, Rosa, unable to believe that she was the Beatrice that Kinzo desired, and suffering from her inability to understand who she was, she expressed a desire to escape to the outside world. Sì, davvero. È un'ottima descrizione, Andrew. Then she fell from the cliff and died. Genji handled that death, which couldn't become public knowledge, very quietly. Funerals aren't for the dead. They exist so that those who are alive can sever their ties with the dead. You can never do that. That's why it festered within you.
Beatrice.
Grandfather, you lost your mistress. No. You lost Beatrice twice. Unable to let that sorrow show on the outside, you kept it locked up in your heart, and it eventually festered and turned to madness. That's what spurred on your abnormal or normally strong interest in the occult in your later years.
Beatrice! Beatrice! なぜに二度までも私の前から去るのか。お前の微笑みを、その美しい髪を、瞳を、私は二度も抱きしめながら、なぜに二度も死すのか。
Why did you leave me twice? Your smile, her beautiful hair, those eyes. Why did you die in my arms not once, but twice? Is that how much? How much? By now, Kinzo wasn't even trying to suppress his sobs. Sometimes he scratched at his head in anguish. Other times he faced the heavens like an opera singer. Kinzo yelled over and over again, repeating Beatrice's name. At that moment, there was a quiet sound of a door closing. When they turned around, she was already there. Kumasawa had appeared. If they already know that much, perhaps we can tell him the rest. Though if they do know that much, I don't believe there is anything more to tell. No, we should tell them. As a woman, I've always thought that the art of the Ecuadorian's Beatrice is a story that should be told. And now, someone has appeared who is worthy to hear it. I believe that now is the time to tell all, without holding back.
Kumasawa-san,
do you know something about Beatrice? Of course she does. In the fourth game, we had testimony from the ferryboat captain saying that Kumasawa went in and out of Ecuadorian. I'd be willing to bet that Kumasawa had different work shifts at the mansion and Ecuadorian. There was a young girl to be taken care of. Kumasawa, with her long experience in taking care of children, must have been of immense value. That is correct. You might even call me her wet nurse. No way. I can't believe it. So everything Wilson is saying is the truth. Yes, it is a fact. There was a secret mansion constructed on the opposite side of the island for Beatrice-sama. The existence of Ecuadoria is the truth. I don't know when Kinzo married his official wife, but back when Kinzo already had an enormous store of wealth and had bought Rokkenjima Hall, he built 2 mansions and set up 2 separate lives. Kinzo's children had also been aware of Kinzo's clandestine eccentricities at that time. It probably hadn't been easy to set up 2 lives. Moreover, Kinzo's wife had been suspicious and had sniffed around all the time. The master stayed in Ecuadorian as much as time allowed. He would sometimes pretend to go on business trips and stay there for several days, treasuring the time he spent with Beatrice-sama. It was not simply a father-daughter relationship. You could sometimes catch a glimpse of his great love for the late Beatrice-sama, and it was a heartwarming thing. Non lo so come stava, non so. The way you say it makes it sound like he sometimes treated her as a substitute for Beatrice. Oh, if it sounded that way, my apologies. Beatrice-sama probably accepted her father's love. However, I will not deny that she was sometimes forced to bear a love she didn't understand. Sto cringiando, sto male. Kumasawa's tone made it sound as though she was scolding Kinzo. As a mother who has raised many kids, Kumasawa had probably spotted that Kinzo's love was often of a mistaken sort. However, the more the girl grew to look like her mother, the more distorted and twisted Kinzo's heart became. Because of his deep love, it grew very, very twisted. You are right to scold me, my friend. I understand. My love is eternal and undying. However, there were times when I directed it at the wrong person, and I must acknowledge that. And father, wait, you don't mean... All humans in this world are tied to each other. Even if they do not notice, there is always some sort of tie. Those ties wrap themselves around people and bring them together. No way. Grandfather. Just as Kinzo had done, Leon also wiped away tears and stared down at the floor. Apparently, the truth had been too much of a shock for the young successor to handle. My lord, perhaps the time has come to speak of it. I see. So that time has come, my friend. Unless you tell us, none of the truth will become clear.
親方様
My lord,
もはや
I believe
知
they
る
may
権
have
利と資
the,
格が
I believe they may have the qualifications and the right to know. I know. Perhaps on this day of my fickle funeral, Beatrice in heaven has given me a chance to atone. Forgive me for not telling you this before now. After taking a deep breath, Kinzo finally lowered the hands that had been covering his face, and looked at Will and Leon with those red eyes.
おじい様
You listen to Leon. Guess Willard, was it? Yeah. I thank you for giving me a chance to speak of the truth while I'm still able. You must surely be a messenger from heaven sent by Beatrice. You have my gratitude. Beatrice isn't the one you have to thank. It was some witch. Well, I guess they are both witches. I do not care who it was. I had been given a chance. That is enough. Thank you, Willard. Kinzo slowly stood up and held out his right hand. He was offering to shake hands. It must have been Kinzo's way of expressing his gratitude. Will responded, and the two hands gripped each other tightly in silence. When they did, a bright light poured out from the gap between the two hands. Will felt as though something the size of a grain had burned itself into his palm. It was the power that Ben Castle had given him. The light grew brighter and brighter. However, it seemed that Kinzo and the others could not see it. Now I will speak. I met Beatrice Castiglioni just before the end of the war. She came from across the sea. So, you're Kinzo?
昔のおじい様です
It is how grandfather looked in the
写
past.
真で見たことがあり
I've
ます
seen photos.
これは一体
Just what on earth? It's the theater going power that Bercastel gave me. Don't try to
頭
understand.
痛になら
I just get an headache? You're getting the hang of this. At one time, Genji told Butler that he looked like Kinzo in his youth. Sure enough, though the young Kinzo wasn't exactly the same as Butler, they looked very similar. Allow me to introduce myself again. I am Ushiromiya Kinzo.
おじい様
Even the voice seemed to resemble Butler's somehow. Clearly, Butler had inherited Kinzo's blood more thickly than any other. I did not want to succeed the Ushiromiya family headship. My being chosen as the head is nothing more than a prank of fate. In the Great Kanto earthquake, those in charge passed away, and you were selected from the branch families.
そうです
That's
おじい
correct.
様は
After all, grandfather was wise despite his youth, and he had already possessed a dignity fitting for the headship. Ridiculous. Those greedy elders were so intent on looking out for their own personal interest that they couldn't even decide on a new head. They were like fools arguing about who the new captain should be on a sinking ship.
だからこそ
Since you had no connections with anyone in the main family, you were selected right out of the blue.
全ては
It's all
この足の指
it's
の
all
せい
because of my toes.
足の指が一本ずつ
If
足り
only
な
I
かっ
had
た
one fewer toe on each foot,
我が人
my
生は
life
全
may
く
have
異なるものに
may
なっ
have
ていた
turned out quite differently. In the Ushiromiya family, polydactyly was seen as a sign of good fortune. This was because it was a common factor among many of the greats in the family history.
くだらぬ話を
It was all very
長老
pathetic.
どもは
The elders
自分たち
didn't
の
care
誰も
whom they
得をしない
dragged in
馬の
as
船であ
long
れ
as
ば
it wouldn't favor any of them over the others.
たまたま分家筋に
So they just happened to hear that someone in one of the branch families had 6 toes
それでいいと決ま
and
ったわ
decided that that would do well enough.
そういうことだ
Precisely.
長老ども
The elders didn't care what sort of novice became the
ど
head,
この青にさえ
as
でもよ
long
かっ
as
た
they could make him their
むしろ
puppet. In fact, the more ignorant this person was of of how to lead, the better it would have been for them.
おじい様
リオン
Leon,
お前は違う
it is quite different in your
お
case.
前は
You will be the one who inherits everything I have.
お前が生を
That
受
is
け
the
た
fate you were granted on the day of your birth.
だからこそ
That is why I gave you that silver ring and raised you so strictly.
そなたは
You are quite different from me.
誰にも恥じる
You
こ
are
と
already a splendid successor,
立派な
of
当主を
whom
後
no
継ぎ
one could be ashamed.
はい
Yes, sir.
操り人
Huh,
形を
puppet hair,
通
huh?
し気楽なものじゃね
I
えだろ
doubt that it could have been easy. As he pondered about where to begin, Kinzo laughed bitterly. He would probably bring back nothing but painful memories, no matter where he started from.
あれは
It lasted for so
あまりに
long,
長い
the
長い
span of grey days,
それは私には
that mind-numbing stretch of time I spent dead passed like moss growing on a rock. I became the rope in the tug of war between the elders, who thought of nothing but their own profit, and I probably could have snapped at any moment. However, people are far more resilient than one would think. Though I spent so many days like a dead man, I was not killed. So I would have searched for death on my own. The next thing I knew, I had reached the age where I could no longer refer to myself as young without drawing laughter from those who were. They were long, dreary, grey days without any substance, and they lasted for a full 20 years. In 20 years, a person can be born, find a purpose, and even become their own man with their own place in the world. In short, if one truly becomes a human only when they have become a working adult, then I spend an amount of time longer enough to create a human, doing nothing except playing the part of a puppet to those greedy old men. Ironically, though the time had aged my body, it did not age my mind. In my heart I was still young, and I looked back fondly on those fulfilling days before I was summoned to Odawara. Only my body continued to age, and at some point the gulf between the two had widened to the point that it was hard to comprehend. So I could hardly believe that the worn-out man in the mirror was really me. No, it really wasn't me. I was the head of the Ushiromiya family in name only. I had no rights, no autonomy. There was no need for me to do anything other than what was asked of me. I was just a doll sitting there on a shelf, gathering dust. I remember nothing by lazily flipping through Western books I liked, locking myself in my own world, doing nothing but playing with roses and drinking terrible drinks. And it lasted a full 20 years. Before I knew it, I had a stranger for a wife. It wasn't any wife I had chosen. She was someone that the elders had chosen and forced on me for their own reasons, the daughter of some noble family or something. But that hardly mattered to me. I did not love my wife, but neither did I dislike her. I just didn't care. I fathered a few children, but that wasn't out of love for my wife. They were just born before I knew it. That's all there was to it. None of it mattered. No, that's not quite right. Everything was decided by someone other than me, and I simply obeyed. That was the job of the Ushiromi family head. On my level, I felt as though my life was being slowly and quietly snuffed out.
信じられません。
I can't believe
強
it.
胆なる名君と
You've
称えられたお
always
じい
been
様。
praised for being such a bold and wise ruler, and yet you live like that for so long.
リオンよ
Leon,
自ら生きぬ
there is
人生
nothing so long and insubstantial as a life you do not live for yourself.
なのに
And
それ
yet
はあっ
it
という間に
passes
過
in a
ぎ去る
blink.
心せよ
Take this to heart.
自ら生
A
きる人
life
生。
you live for yourself.
生きるってことは
Living
意
means
志を
having
持
your
つという
own
の
will.
が殺された日々だったの
You
よ
probably were dead during that time.
そうだ
Precisely.
私は生きたかった
I wanted to live. No,
死にたかっ
I wanted to
た
die.
操り人形はどう
What
すれば
must a
死ね
puppet do to die?
糸を
Cut
断ち切
the
ることです。
strings.
そうだ
Correct.
それが死ぬこと
That
で
would
あ
be
り
death.
生き
It
るこ
would
と
be
であり
life. And it would be release. Before I realized it, the world had grown troubled. World War II, the Pacific War. Japan had extended their war fronts too far to the east and west, and the tide of war was changing. Thanks to the influence of the elders, I was able to avoid the conscription. Of course, that was not out of compassion for me. It was because I was their precious puppet. So the war never really felt that close to me. However, when I personally decided to abandon their protection, it was very easy. At that time, the Ushiromi family had almost completely collapsed, and since the elders had apparently pilfered enough of the scraps to last them the rest of their lives, they seemed to care little for what I did, now that they no longer had any use for me. So I realized that I finally found my time to die. One by one, I cut the threads I was hanging from and began to search for a place to end my life.
戦地で死を
So you search for death on the battlefield.
同じ死ぬ
I thought that if I was going to
誰か
die
の役に
anyway,
立つべきと思う
I should try to be of some use to
い
someone.
や違う
No, that's a lie.
私には自らの
I
命を
probably
絶つ
just
気力
lacked
さ
the
えなかった
willpower to end my own
もっ
life.
ともらしく死ねる理
Or
由
was a suitable excuse for
戦
death.
争だったのだ
おじい様は土木建築の
I
知識があ
heard
り
that
ましたの
your
で
knowledge in public works and construction led you to being tasked with setting up facilities for the Navy construction team.
とんで
And
も
what a
ございない
miscalculation that
何の
was.
取り柄もないと言っ
If
て
I
お
had
けば
just said that I
す
had
ぐに
no
も死ねる
useful
最前線へ
skills,
送られ
I
た
would
と
have been sent to the front lines where I could die at a moment's notice.
最前線に行かずに済
So
む
you ended up not having to go to the front lines.
幸いと
Some of the others were overjoyed at their luck.
私には逆だっ
It was the opposite for me.
た戦って死ぬと
My only desire was to get my hands on the intoxicating liquor of battle and drink myself to death.
忘れられた島の上空
The
を
US planes did nothing but cut across the sky at that forsaken island.
彼らは私のために
They didn't even have a bullet to spare for me, much
鉛
less
玉
a
の一
bomb.
つさえ恵んではくれなかったのだよ
おじい様は
Is
その
this
日
the
々の
time
中
you
で
met
ベ
Beatrice,
アトリーチェにお会いにな
grandfather?
られ
そうだあれ
Correct.
は
She came to me from the sea.
どこで会った
Where did you meet her?
島と言ったが
You mentioned an island.
ここだよ
It was here.
この島にやって
She
きた
came to this island.
お前たちは
So you met her
ロッケン
on
島で出会っていたという
Rokkenjima.
のか
どういうことですか
What's going
おじい
on?
様が
I heard that Rokkenjima was inhabited until you bought it, grandfather.
この島に
I never knew that there was a Japanese military base here.
そうだな
Yes, you could hardly call that a military base.
ただの岩窟
It
よ
was just a cave.
私は
I was one of the
そ
guards
の
of that
岩
cave.
窟の番人だったのだ
1944. Cazzo! Ops. Sistemato. Oh no. 1944. 40. Due to the honorable defeat. Scusa, un attimo. Devo rifare perché mi dà fastidio. Ho sbagliato. Bello che l'ho cercato prima di partire con la live, ma fammi tornare indietro. 1944. Due to the honorable defeats of Saipan and Guam, Japan's absolute national defense zone strategy was in shambles. Where had the gallantry of the start of the war gone? The old attackers were now the ones on the defensive. At that time, it was said that the final trump card for the Japanese military were the so-called special attack weapons. It was said that these ultimate weapons were packed with 1.55 tons of explosives and capable of sinking any kind of warship with a single blast. To strengthen homeland defense, the Navy drafted a plan to build a string of hidden bases from Hachijojima to Yokosuka, all to house submarines loaded with special attack weapons. I knew that there was a base constructed on Hachijojima. To think that there was one on Rokkenjima too. I just what sort of fool decided it would be a good idea to plant a base on this desolate island? I have no idea. To better preserve its secrecy? Ridiculous. I could never understand what the higher-ups were thinking, and I didn't particularly care. These truly were ultimate weapons, able to take down large warships in a single strike. It was hoped that the presence of submarines capable of loading these weapons in the waters just off of Japan would allow for a powerful sea ambush as the final line of defense. So, to aid in the establishment of a base with absolute secrecy, the uninhabited island Rokkenjima was raised as a possible candidate. And an investigation of the island resulted in the discovery of a large cave in the cliffs. And this was apparently deemed to be a suitable location for a submarine base. So, you were tasked with aiding in the establishment of that base? Establishment? Certainly, if you can call digging out a cave establishment. Not only that, the base was abandoned before its completion. Why? Because at that time, Japan no longer had any submarines large enough to carry one of those weapons. How truly laughable. What's the point in having a submarine base if there aren't any submarines left? If there's one thing that never changes, it's politicians and their meaningless projects. The base of Hachijojima was actually outfitted with those weapons and became a base for direct attacks, but Rokkenjima was never supplied with any. Not only that, they cancelled the construction work entirely, leaving only a crew of minimal size stationed on the island, waiting for orders from above that never came. Could it be the fact that it was a hidden base sealed our fate? The higher ups had already completely forgotten about this useless and pointless cavern. We were nothing more than guards for a mere cave. We spent our days farming, fishing, and playing in the dirt, all the while gazing up at the American formation flying past. Some of our groups were relieved at the prospects of the war ending before anyone remembered we were here, and before any of us had to face a real battle. Of course, it was the opposite for me. I hoped beyond hope for the American troops to advance and kill me as soon as possible. And then, on one of those hollow days, let us go back there now. Back to the turning point in my life, my fate, when Ushiromi Akinzo finally became alive. Oopsie.
貴様たるんでいるぞ
Step it up!
決戦は間近という
What are you doing?
その
Slacking off when
敵
there's fighting so close. Stars seemed to spin around inside my head. I could just lie down on the floor but that's the only thing that only made him more angry. I have no intention of being obedient. Still, it'd be stupid to get myself punched for no reason, so I got up and stood at attention. Fighting's close, is it? You really think the American troops are likely to show up on this forgotten island? Then let them come right now. That's what I've been waiting for all this
その
time.
腐った目つきは何か
What's this cowardly look you're wearing? Is this how afraid you are of death?
そんなに米兵が
Are
恐
you
ろしいか
so scared of those Americans?
そんな気合が
You won't be
嘘や
killing any of them with an attitude like that. They hit me again. Could you please quit your whining already, filthy cowards? They give themselves over to this inexplicable anger because it's the only way to distract themselves from their own fear. Heart and spirit aren't any use when the battle becomes hopeless. When trapped by an insurmountable hopelessness, humans rely on several other emotions to escape their fear. These young, inexperienced soldiers found anger to be a very convenient emotion to fall back upon. They did drills by shouting in loud voices and swinging their bamboo spears around. Drinking the wine called anger was simply what they needed to do to numb their fear. The more one drinks wine, the more one needs to drink to get drunk. Their useless anger continued to pile up day after day without pause. As for me, I did not fear death, so I had no need of the wine called anger. This made their cowardice all the more apparent to me.
その目つき
There you go again, that look in your eyes. Ushiromiya, your spirit is rotten to the core. You are a fish, that's what you are. You've got the eyes of a dead fish. However, it went both ways. Just as I was able to spot their cowardice, they were able to pick up on my lethargy. Is Ushiromiya Kinzo here? The lieutenant is looking for you. Stand up! No slouching about. Double time! The first Lieutenant Yamamoto was the commanding officer in charge of the Rokkenjima garrison. He was just another filthy coward trying to forget his fear with violence, and would reprimand his subordinates for slacking off at the drop of a hat. The stories of his life he'd sprout off when in a good mood were all about how much of a thug he had been, ignoring the rules of society, on and on about how so-and-so was a prick, so he had taught them a lesson, and how everyone was so scared of him that he got special treatment. And kept on talking about what a vile human he was, as though it was a badge of honor. Normally, I had nothing to do with this disagreeable lieutenant. He would always hang around with his non-commissioned subordinates, so as long as I treated him with a snappy salute, I could more or less ignore him for the time being. Now that the reconstruction project on this island had been suspended indefinitely, there was no longer any use for an engineer like me. So why did the lieutenant ask for me specifically? At that moment I couldn't think of anything. Ushiromiya, I hear you're good at speaking foreign languages. Is that true? I am proficient in both English and Chinese, sir. The lieutenant liked to brag about his education in front of the non-commissioned officers, but he held a bit of a grudge against me for being even more highly educated than him. He also felt uncomfortable about having me as a subordinate because he was younger than me, so I was definitely not the kind of person he could hit it off with. Just the fact that I knew several languages must have hurt his pride. What about Italian? Do you speak that? I'm afraid not. So you wouldn't be any help as an Italian interpreter, then? It should be possible if one of them speaks English as well, sir. Yes, very true. Have you ever talked with a foreigner in English? I have, sir. Why on earth would he need an interpreter in a cave on an uninhabited island that even our superiors have forgotten? His questions made it clear that someone who would need an interpreter would be visiting Rokkenjima. Good. Ushiromiya, you'll be my interpreter. That's an order. That evening, I found out exactly what he was talking about. Oh, Boreral! Madonna, Boreral. That pointless cavern submarine dock that had never been used was now being approached slowly by a submarine of the Italian Navy. Of course, I knew that the Italians had been our allies. However, this was the first time I've seen anything from the military with my own eyes. Why was the Italian Navy doing here? What was the Italian Navy doing here? Didn't Italy surrender in 1943? Oddio, adesso c'è una frase, ragazzi, scusatevi. C'è una frase che dovrò pronunciare. Mi farà un po' ridere. È un po' problematica. Warning, ok? Warning. Didn't Italy surrender in 1943? What's going on? It was the Kingdom of Italy that surrendered. However, the one who couldn't accept that surrender formed a pro-German government called the RSI, so they could continue fighting. The RSI? The Italian Social Republic, also known as the Salò Republic. You know your history. The ignorant often call the Italians cowards, saying that they surrendered first of the Axis power in 1943. That's not true. The military of the Italian Social Republic fought bravely from the outbreak of war until April 29, 1945. Ah, bene, bene, vabbè, se lo dice Kinzo va bene. Se lo dice Kinzo va bene, soprattutto Kinzo giovane che è in questo contesto. Ok. Non so perché mi ricordavo che lo dicesse Will. Se l'avesse detto Will sarebbe stato un problema. Va bene, Kinzo puoi dire che sono stati prodi combattenti. Va bene, ok. Non so perché mi ricordavo lo dicesse Will. Bene, meglio. And Berlin fell just 3 days after that. Far from being cowards, they gave one hell of a fight. Vaffanculo. Still, I'm surprised that the RSS Navy had even possession of a submarine that could travel all the way to Japan. Even if they did, it's a surprise that they come out this far at all. Why would they have come to Japan? To Rokkenjima? The submarine was both weather-worn and massive. This dock had never even been used by one of our own country's submarines. I doubt anyone here imagined that he would end up welcoming in one from a far-off nation. All of the guards of Rokkenjima, of which there were about 30, stood at attention as the submarine docked. Never seen the Italian military before. I heard a mine of sort kinda accidentally trashed their sub. From what I've heard, their ventilation system was hit, and they couldn't stop the cabin filling up with chlorine gas. The lieutenant was hinting about there being something very important in there. You mean like a code machine or the blueprint from some kind of new engine? I couldn't care less what they are carrying. I'm more surprised that the higher-ups still remember we exist. Move it, Ushiromiya! How are you supposed to interpret from over there? Yes, sir! On top of the hatch was a young Italian saluting us. Normally, this should have been the job of the commissioned officer, but his clothes looked like those of a sailor, and it didn't look like he had the dignity and composure of a ship's captain. That probably meant that all of the commissioned officers in charge had died in the accident that had befallen this sub. Crew members crawled out of the hatch one by one, but they looked all pale and entirely worn out. It wasn't sure how long ago that accident happened, but being crammed together in a tiny sub filled with chlorine gas for any amount of time can't be good for your health. Adding to the problem of the broken ventilation system was the fact that they couldn't afford to travel about carelessly on the surface of waters around Japan right now. They had essentially traveled here inside a can of poison gas. Almost all of them were unable to walk without leaning on someone else. It looked like a bunch of people staggering out of a hospital boat. Ushiromiya! Ask them who the captain is. Tell them that I'm in charge of this island. Welcome to Japan. Do any of you speak English? The crew members seemed to understand that I was speaking English, but it looked as though none of them could speak it. Eventually, someone who seemed to be dressed as an officer saluted. Welcome to Japan. Are you the captain?
I cannot speak English.
I cannot speak English.
Please, wait.
Please wait. The officer answered in slow, laborious English. After asking us to wait, he shouted something to his subordinates in rapid Italian. It looked as though he was telling them to get someone among them who could speak English. Ushiromiya, what are they talking about? They've asked us to wait. They might be looking for someone there who can speak English. At that moment, I heard a high-pitched cough. It wasn't a man's cough. It was a woman's. I speak English. As she came down from the hatch, a woman with beautiful golden hair said this in English. In this filthy cavern, the appearance of one as beautiful as she would seem like an angel descending upon us. Welcome to Japan. Is the captain there? The captain is dead. The man over there is the only officer left. My condolences. Can we do anything to assist you? Well, we would like some fresh air and water. Some of us are still having trouble breathing. We'd like a place to rest. We will be happy to help. Do any of the others understand English? There were some who did, but they're all dead. I'm the only one now. Ushiromiya! What's that woman talking about? Who's the captain? That man from a second ago. Who is that woman? Let's see some translating, damn it! The lieutenant wouldn't shut up. He must have been surprised to see such a beautiful woman appear from the submarine, and more than a little annoyed to see that all of her attention focused on me alone. It was a mark of how divinely beautiful she was. Sir, it seems that she's the only one who understands English. She will act as their interpreter. Their captain is dead. That officer seems to be acting in his place. Who is that loud man who keeps yelling at you? Don't tell me he's your superior. Yes, unfortunately. He probably doesn't like seeing me with such a beautiful lady all to myself. Oh, I didn't expect such flattery from an Asian. Your English is superb. I imagine you've been brought up very well. Unlike that rude man who keeps on shouting. They should have made you the officer in charge around here. Oh, I didn't expect such flattery from a Westerner. You're an interesting man. What's your name? Ushiromiya Kinza. If you don't mind, may I ask your name as well? Beatrice Castiglioni. Welcome, Beatrice. Welcome to Japan. No, calmi. That was when I first met Beatrice, the woman who would capture my heart for the rest of my life. So, Beatrice was an Italian. Yes, she was the daughter of a high-ranking RSI official. Apparently, their most important cargo was the father himself. Sadly, he had already died by the time they reached Rokkenjima. È un po' godo. Why would a high official like that come to Japan? You're saying he went through the Suez Canal and crossed the Indian Ocean to come all the way here? But that's a good point. If they wanted to reach one of their allies, Germany should have been much closer. So why would they make the long trip to Japan? He may have been part of some grand, outrageous strategy. I don't know all the details, but shortly after, I learned that this submarine's mission was far from a minor one. They said there had been about 60 of them at the time of their departure. However, about 10 of them, including Beatrice, had survived. Their submarine had apparently hit a mine or something in the nearby waters and sustained a great deal of damage. They told us that he had flooded rapidly with water, which had taken out the batteries and released a large amount of chlorine gas. Their sub had become completely incapable of continuing further, nothing but a massive lump of metal floating in the dock. Since their sub seemed to be carrying something of immense value, the higher-ups ordered us to investigate. After questioning the Italians, with Beatrice and me acting as double interpreters, we concluded that this thing of immense value must have been her father himself. Apparently, Beatrice's father was an extremely high up in the RSI hierarchy, and he was thought that he might have worked alongside the Italian Prime Minister himself. Il signor Testa all'ingiù. Though their massive voyage had apparently been part of some top secret mission, now that the man himself and all of the commissioned officer had died, the reason for coming to Japan remained a mystery. And since the higher-ups were telling us to investigate, that meant that even they didn't know what it was. Their ship had broken down, their mission was unknown, and the high official they had been carrying was dead. And even the Japanese government didn't know what they were here for. The Italians' great and perilous voyage had come to a meaningless and utterly fruitless end. That's a relief. I always assumed that the Japanese ocean air would smell like soy sauce. What a coincidence. I always thought the Italians had the hair made of pasta. Of course we do. You don't know how hard it is to get that perfect al dente texture. I imagine you Japanese also wear spaghetti al nero. Oh, you know quite a lot, I see. In Japan, we like to use squid ink instead of shampoo. You really are amazing, Kinzo. It seems you know everything. Have you ever been to Italy? Oh, ovviamente mi fa troppo ridere che la prima cosa che dicono gli italiani all'estero è parlare dell'Italia. Però va bene. Never. I have read a lot of your books though. An Asian man reading Italian books? Wow, what kind of books? Niccolò Machiavelli and Dante Alighieri. So I know of course that you are the eternal lady. Madonna, qua la sta rizzando. Questa è la scuola di Riz con Ushiromi Akinzo, classe 1944. Oh, what a surprise! You must be quite a bookworm. Does this mean that you came from some Japanese noble family? Who knows? You're completely different from those other savage-looking Japanese soldiers. I can tell. You must have come from a noble family. Are the Ushiromi some sort of Japanese aristocrats? Of course not. They just managed to strike it rich in the spinning industry in recent generations. I didn't study to prepare myself for nobility or anything like that. I just wasn't allowed to do anything else. Reading books, playing around with roses, and getting myself drunk were the only ways I had to occupy myself. Beatrice hadn't asked the question out of malice. It had just been a curious question asked to a friend from a faraway country. However, Beatrice was from a noble family herself, so she could tell. She could see the faint gloomy look on Kinzo's face. Forgive me, Kinzo. It was so I was so surprised that a high-class person like you would be a simple soldier in a place like this, that I didn't stop to think about why. I don't really care about my family line. The name Ushiromiya will mean nothing when I'm dead, and that will be what finally sets me free. So, you joined the army because you wanted to die? Oh, you mustn't do that. Your family would be so sad. Family. I have no family. Kinzo, tira fuori la fede un attimino, che c'hai figli a casa. I had a wife for the sake of public appearances and children. However, I never wanted any of them. Everything is a fleeting daydream created by selfish, greedy old men. So at least being stuck on this island, I can forget about all of that and find some peace. But haven't I spent each and every day complaining that I wasn't sent to the front and haven't managed to die yet? I can understand the pain you're going through, but I do realize that my thoughtless words have hurt you. Forgive me, Kinzo. Forgive me, Kinzo. Oh, those words, I think they've set me free. All of the Japanese people call me Ushiromiya. Every time I heard it, it's a constant reminder that I'm the property of the Ushiromiya family. But she's different. She calls me Kinzo, not Ushiromiya. So maybe, just for the time I chat with her like this, I can forget that cursed family. Kinzo. I hadn't meant to make Beatrice feel guilty, but she seemed certain that her thoughtless words had hurt me. Thank you. Huh? You calling me Kinzo makes me feel like I can finally be my own man. I think that I've finally met a person who truly sees me for who I am. Kinzo, you may be a foreigner I met in a distant island, but I know your heart is very sensitive and beautiful. If we had grown up in the same neighborhood, I'm sure we would have quickly become friends. I'm happy too. You always call me Beatrice, not the daughter of the Castiglioni family. We were both in the same position. Her Castiglioni family must have been a rigid place as well. Though we came from different countries, we had finally found something we could truly understand about each other. Do you have a nickname that people close to you use? No. They would just call me Kinzo. Well, then you should stop calling me Beatrice. All of my close friends used to call me Bice. I'd like you to call me that too. Very well. From this point onwards, I will call you Bice as a sign of our friendship. Oh, come on. You can't talk all stiff like that. We are friends now, okay? A bright smile stretched across Beatrice's face. No matter how many decades pass, that smile will never fade from my memory. So, by meeting Beatrice, you managed to regain your sense of self. Or, as most people would put it, he cheated on his wife. If you plan to continue being rude, I suggest you get in a habit of covering your butt. After having his punch pinched, ma porca troia. Botus pinted. After having his butt pinched once more, Will hopped around in a pathetic agony. In your eyes, grandfather. Bogus pinted? So in your eyes, grandfather, Rokkenjima was always special for being the place you first met Beatrice. If I had never come to this island, I would have never met her. It truly is an island of miracles. Is there anything left of that submarine base today? Yes, it's still there, close to Ecuadorian. It's in the shadows of a cove that can be seen from the outside. After all, fishermen never approach this supposedly ill-omened island. It is unlikely that anyone besides me still knows of its existence. Is the 2-kilometer-long underground passage between Ecuadorian and the mansion a remnant of that base? That is correct. There was some nonsense about carving a network of tunnels out in the limestone caverns, which would connect a number of bunkers across the island. I made use of those tunnels and had 2 mansions built, one at each end of the island. 2 mansions, 2 families. The Ushiromiya family mansion and the mansion for Kinzo, released from the shackles of the Ushiromiya family. Correct. It was something I needed. A place for me to escape from the cursed name of Ushiromiya. Still, I do feel bad for you. Must have been awful to have come all the way out here and being unable to fulfill your mission. I don't really care what... I don't really know what Papa's plan was. He said that he needed to run far away and hide it until the time came. And what is it? I don't know. It was something very important, and he planned to hide it for many years until the right moment. And he planned for us to remain hidden alongside it. I know because he apologized to me that I might be spending a very long time on foreign soil. Didn't Ensign Angelo say... Ensign forse è un grado della... perché non penso sia un cognome. Vabbè, Angelo. Didn't Angelo say that you had no cargo in particular and that you were transporting your father instead? The ensign, the ensign doesn't trust you or the others. Even I know a few things he kept hidden from you. He might even know what Papa's goal was and what the cargo is. Whatever it is, that's a mission for the Italian military. It has nothing to do with us. In fact, given that we are allies, we'll be willing to help if they only ask. I have no doubt that you are a good person, Kinzo. I even told Ensign Angelo that you're a man we can trust, but why is that the men always get so rigid and uptight when they're in a strange land? Normally, they're all very bright and cheery people. Even since we came here, there's been this strange feeling of tension. Ensign Angelo had ordered that his subordinates be armed at all times. It's almost as though we're in enemy territory. That was true. The Italians were clearly the very opposite of relaxed. The Japanese soldiers watching this began to suspect the Italians didn't really trust them at all. That's normal for a soldier. This is precisely the time for them to straighten up their guard so they don't embarrass themselves in front of a friendly army. They have a person stand watch every time they sleep, and they're still keeping a lookout to make sure none of you approach the submarine, even though it's nothing more than an unusual scrap heap. And I'm not so singhiozzo, even though it's nothing more than an unusual scrap heap now. It almost feels as though they're acting openly hostile towards the Japanese, and that bothers me. True, they had set up a constant sentry by the submarine and had refused to let any of the Japanese soldiers come near. This hadn't made the Japanese particularly happy. However, submarines are treated as classified in all countries. Maybe it was just natural for them to stop foreigners from approaching it without reason. They're probably uncomfortable with being made to live in a way that they aren't used to. That boat, which is supposed to take you back to the mainland, is still being delayed by weather and problems up the command chain. Just how long will it take before they can send you there? We had been told that the boat was being sent from them directly from the mainland, but apparently, thanks to the weather problems up to the command chain and the recent air raids, there were no ship to spare for a forgotten island like this. There might have been some sort of diplomatic problem. After all, their homeland has already surrendered to the Allies. I didn't know the details. The only thing I knew for sure was that they've been stuck on Rokkenjima for 2 whole weeks and no one come to get them. Of course, we had some small boats on Rokkenjima. There was nothing physically stopping us from taking them to a nearby island. Still, Rokkenjima was technically a top secret base and contact with the outside world had been strictly forbidden. Well, nothing we can do about it. And it isn't all that bad, really. After all, if a boat did come for us, I'll probably never see you again, Kinzo. True. To me, those 2 weeks were the first I'd ever truly lived. The faint 20 years before all seemed to vanish in the sparkle of those 2 weeks. I realized that she would have to leave this place eventually, and yet this one moment felt so rich and dazzling that I felt myself wishing it could last forever. Then I heard a voice calling for Beatrice in Italian. It's an ensign Angelo. Looks like he wants you for something. Probably to scold me. These days he keeps yapping on about how I shouldn't get too friendly with Japanese soldiers. The ensign approached, saluting Kinzo. And after glancing at Beatrice as though asking her to translate something, he began to speak in Italian. Judging by his tone, it sounded like something serious. Ensign Angelo has something very important to say, so he wants to talk with your commanding officer. He seeks assistance with something. I don't know what. Something important. Got it. I'll go find Lieutenant Yamamoto. Ensign Angelo had 2 of his subordinates with him and wore a stern expression on his face. They didn't have to say anything for us to realize that this must be something very serious. That's it! Lift it up! The winch creaked and the thick chain rang out with a dull clang. Very, very slowly, it was lifted up out of the submarine cargo hold. Now I get it. So this is why those Italians didn't want us near their sub. The lieutenant and the others looked up at what the winch was slowly lifting up, and all of them wearing unpleasant forced smiles. Unbelievable. So this is what Papa brought all this way? Incredible. I've never seen anything like this. It was a mountain of gold ingots. Those carefully piled bars were being slowly lifted out of the cargo hold, one group after another. The gold had been their true cargo. They don't know where they were planning to take it. They might have been trying to sneak it into Japan, one of their allies, or they might have been on their way to hide it in some remote area. Was it some sort of strategy? A conspiracy? Embezzlement? Top secret transportations of wealth? The incomprehensible amount of gold led to all sorts of dark suspicions, but we didn't know anything about the truth. All told, the gold weighed an incredible 10 tons. That was the only truth we could wrap our minds around at that moment. They had strongly resisted showing this to us. However, the submarine could no longer make sea, and it was apparently continuing to take in water bit by bit. Rokkenjima had been outfitted in an extremely slip-hold way, so we had no means of repairing it. Also, while we could unload the sub, there was no way we could lift it up again once it was filled with water and sunk to the bottom. It was clear that unless action was taken, the gold would soon become completely impossible to transport. And so, they had made the decision to unload it. Of course, they made no efforts in explaining the reasons for all this gold. They had just asked us to help them take it out. Why would they take so much gold out of the country? Couldn't they have changed the course of the war with this much wealth? Weapons change the course of war, but after the war, they aren't useful for anything. Money may also change the course, but it remains just as valuable after the war. There was no longer any way to change the course of this war. The Axis powers would probably all surrender, leading to an Allied victory. Anyone could tell this simply by looking at the American planes flying across the sky day after day. However, gold would still be valuable even after the war was over. Everyone stared upwards, dumbfounded, as the winch slowly lifted the dully sparkling gold. Perfetto. Momento perfetto per chiudere.